Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case, the case of Marta Russo. The Marta Russo case not only shocked Italy in the late 1990s, but also became a symbol of unsolved mysteries in the history of criminal justice. The sudden death of a promising young woman on the campus of Sapienza University, which is considered a symbol of intellectualism and enlightenment, left the whole society in a state of shock. Behind that tragic event, the doubts, controversies, and the inscrutable motives of those accused created a story that was heartbreaking and mysterious. Today's story will show how carelessness can lead to dire consequences when an investigation begins. Typically, the circumstances tend to complicate the investigation. Unfortunately, some detectives manipulate these circumstances to fit their narrative. This can result in a controversial case like the one we will discuss today, which still many unanswered questions. Marta Russo, born in 1975, described as intelligent, energetic, and promising. At the time of the events, Marta had just turned 22 in March. She was a young and beautiful law student at the prestigious University of La Sapienza in Rome. Fulfilling her long-held dream of attending this historic institution, Marta had ambitious plans for her future and aspired to become a lawyer. Before achieving that goal, she needed to complete her degree. She was known for being compassionate and sociable, always eager to help others. She even expressed her wish to donate her organs in the event of her death. On the morning of May 9, 1997, she was having a typical day, walking on the university campus with her friend Rosanna Capone, moving between the buildings of the University of Statistics, Politics, and Law. They were carrying textbooks and notebooks while discussing their upcoming exams. There were no signs of anything unusual happening. Suddenly, at 11:42, Rosanna heard a strange clicking sound, and Marta collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Rosanna thought it might have been a weapon, but she wasn't certain. Several witnesses who saw Marta fall rushed over to help. However, other passers-by disagreed with Rosanna's belief that Marta had been attacked by force. They listened to Rosanna but thought she was mistaken, as the possibility of a violent attack at such a time and place seemed too improbable. All doubts were quickly resolved when a pool of blood began to form beneath the head of Marta. Who would attack a defenseless student in the middle of the day on a university campus filled with people? It seemed unbelievable. Marta had been wounded, and a small bullet hole was discovered in her left ear, indicating that the bullet had entered her brain. Bystanders called for an ambulance right away, which arrived to assess her condition. Marta was alive but in critical condition and needed to be rushed to the hospital. Once at the clinic, she fell into a coma. Her brain function ceased, but life support was maintained in hopes that she might recover. Her parents prayed for her safety and hoped she would regain consciousness. Meanwhile, doctors recognized that her chances of recovery were nearly non-existent. Even if Marta did wake up, there was almost a certainty that she would be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of her life. At the time, forensic experts were working at the crime scene. It was an open area connecting two university buildings. Along the edges of the passage, there was a building facade with windows and a blank wall opposite, with a few sparse trees. Detectives needed to determine the attacker's location at the time of the incident. Marta's friend couldn't pinpoint where the sound came from. It was very quiet, and Rosanna was the only witness to hear the sound of the attack. Another challenge arose when Marta's body was moved several times during attempts to help her. This made it difficult for detectives to establish her exact position when she was attacked, to find the location of the criminal. In order to understand who could even have the idea to shoot an ordinary student, the police began investigating Marta's background. Investigators believed that she may have been in contact with a villain or even involved in a crime, but the investigation showed that the victim was an ordinary, kind girl, and studying her biography did not turn up any potential suspects. Her friends were also typical students, and she had not been in a relationship recently, she spending all her free time studying. Even her diary entries were examined, but they contained nothing suspicious. The investigators began to suspect that the killer's true target was Rosanna. Marta just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, so was killed by accident. The police had gathered some remarkable information. In the days leading up to the murder, Rosanna received 45 anonymous phone calls, which were quite unusual. When she answered one call, there was only silence on the other end, and she gained no information. Additionally, an unknown man called Rosanna's father late at night caused a heated debate where he insulted her but never revealed his identity. With this information, the police started to believe that the attacker intended to kill Rosanna, but mistakenly killed Marta instead. They considered the possibility that the attack was a failed act of revenge against Rosanna's father. He is an influential official who oversaw several prisons. The investigators was thought that the murder of his daughter could be the work of a former inmate. However, detectives investigated these theories and ultimately found them unconvincing. While Rosanna's father may have had enemies, there was no evidence to suggest a motive for harming his family members. Another hypothesis is put forward. The university, in addition to its fame, always had a bad reputation. There have been multiple uprisings and spontaneous attacks on campus. Such cases do happen with alarming frequency. This university was even the site of a terrorist attack on February 12, 1980. Unknown assailants riot in the lobby by weapon in one of the academic buildings while a professor was present. He was attacked 7 times and died as a result. This attack was not an isolated incident. It occurred during a time of heightened political tension, with similar outbreaks linked to the so-called Red Brigades. On March 27, 1985, a university economics professor became a victim of unknown criminals in a new attack. The Red Brigades claimed responsibility for these crimes, stating that such actions were part of their political struggle. However, the murder of Marta, and even Rosanna in 1997, appeared to be senseless acts of violence in this context. Another supporting detail for this theory is the coincidence that May 9th marked the anniversary of the discovery of the body of Aldo Moro, a prominent political figure. It is believed that on this occasion, the Red Brigades decided to launch a new artillery attack. In previous incidents, the Red Brigades had openly admitted their guilt for the crimes they committed. Yet this time, no one took responsibility for the attack on Marta Russo. This was illogical, as it would have made more political sense to target a university professor rather than an ordinary student. As the police investigated, doctors were tried to save Marta. A surgeon removed a .22 caliber bullet from her head, which was then sent to the lab for analysis. At this point, ballistics experts believed that the faint noise heard was likely due to either the use of a silencer or the types of weapons that produce a quieter sound, especially at a distance, making it hard to identify. The .22 caliber was a common choice, as it has low stopping power and generates significantly less noise than more weapon firearms. Forensic experts worked on reconstructing the bullet's trajectory to help identify potential shooting locations. However, because the body had been moved, their efforts were ultimately insufficient and likely inaccurate. The investigation indicated that the attacker likely operated from a building across the street from where the victim was walking. It was presumed that the guy has attacked from a window. Calculations suggested that the guy was in a bathroom adjacent to the classrooms where statistics students were studying. Given the low number of students present at that time, this location allowed the attacker to remain unnoticed and escape without drawing attention. The day after the attack, this theory was supported by a statement from a statistics student who reported visiting the bathroom shortly after the incident. He noticed that the window was wide open, even though it was usually kept closed. Detectives focused their efforts on the area, including the street beneath the window. They quickly located the shell casing from the weapon, which had been overlooked on the first day because it was hidden under a car. To the surprise of ballistic experts, the casing did not match the bullet that killed Marta. Investigators found numerous bullet holes on the wall next to the crime scene. It appears that the students used the restroom as a weapons practice range. Someone had been practicing frequently. A cartridge case discovered at the scene might have come from these practice sessions. While investigating the bathroom, police also uncovered a small nearby room used as a storage area by a cleaning company that worked at the university. Given the trajectory of the bullet, detectives considered this room as a possible location from which the criminal attacked. Access to this room was initially restricted. Investigators conducted thorough checks on all cleaning company employees associated with the university. They discovered that many of these employees were weapon enthusiasts with licenses. Some of them could obtain weapons even without a license. Furthermore, the inventory storage room contained a significant amount of ammunition. Investigators found various types of weapons and equipment, including silencers. They also discovered several different types of bullets, including .22 caliber cartridges. It is curious that the employees of the cleaning company were free from cleaning from 9 to 14 o'clock, and there should not have been anyone there. The attack on Marta occurred at 11:42 a.m., which fell within this time frame. Investigators needed to interview all the cleaners, but they offer alibis in an effort to clear themselves of suspicion. Eventually, all the employees' information was verified. During the investigation, no illegal firearm storage was discovered, as the owners had proper licenses were registered. The cleaning staff admitted that they occasionally used the wall of a nearby building as a weapons practice range, but they insist on always practicing from a trailer and being cautious when no one is around. This situation raised more questions. On May 14, the equipment keeping Marta alive was turned off, and she was pronounced dead. She had been in a coma for 5 days without recovering. Her parents and sister honored her last wish by donating her organs. Around 10,000 people attended Marta's funeral, including relatives, friends, students, and local residents who wanted to pay their respects to her. The mother of Marta revealed that she felt a strong sense of anxiety on the morning of the tragedy, which she found impossible to shake off. Initially, she didn't think much of her unease until the police contacted her about Marta's problem. There was growing public dissatisfaction with the police due to a series of high-profile cases that had not been solved. These failures severely harmed the reputation of the police in Rome. Therefore, they was urgently necessary to restore the lost reputation. This provoked decisive actions from the police, which had a devastating effect. The investigation began when detectives approached the librarian, a 36-year-old man who owns a suppressor and a .22 caliber weapon. Initially, he was considered a suspect, but he had a solid alibi. He was in the audience during the attack, and many witnesses confirmed his presence. As a result, he was cleared of suspicion. The detectives enlisted top forensic experts to search for microscopic gunpowder particles in the building. They meticulously examined windowsills, floors, and various surfaces to identify the location from which of the attacker. Unfortunately, significant time had elapsed since the incident, and the room had been cleaned multiple times. Additionally, rain the following day may have washed away any evidence on the building's exterior. Investigators scoured several floors, and after about 3 hours, they discovered 2 tiny particles of barium and antimony, which are linked to weapon. However, not on the windowsills in the restroom, but on the floor above, in office number 6, rather than on the restroom windowsills. In office number 6, a stain on the windowsill was suspected to be gunpowder, but it was uncertain because many employees in the building owned weapon. Therefore, it was challenging to determine who might have left the trace. Despite the doubt, the stain was deemed reliable evidence. The substance's chemical composition was analyzed, revealing similarities to printer ink or burnt rubber. Investigators concentrated on office number 6, which was a likely location for the attack. Based on the possible trajectory calculations, the attack could have originated from almost anywhere on the campus facade, including the roof. Nevertheless, the police identified the individuals who were in that room during the time of the attack. The office was designated for department assistants, and both students and faculty could access it. All individuals present were questioned. During the investigation, detectives noticed a peculiar pattern. Each person claimed they were not in room number 6 at the time of the murder. The investigators suspected this was a sign of collusion among them. While searching office number 6, they discovered a mobile phone that had made a call at 11:44 on the day of the case, just minutes after the attack. The investigators traced the call to a professor's daughter named Maria Chiara Lipari. She admitted to being in the room during the call, but claimed she did not see anyone with a weapon. She firmly denied any involvement in the murder, stating she did not know Marta, had no motive, and did not possess a weapon of the specified caliber. At this point, the police officers were determined to investigate the situation involving office number 6 thoroughly. They decided to interview Maria at the police station. During these interviews, Maria appeared confused and changed her story multiple times. She was questioned 13 times, and she provided new details in almost every session. Afterward, she expressed that the investigators were pressuring her. Eventually, she recalled that when she returned to office number 6 to make a phone call, a man had come out to meet her. He mumbled something unclear, like hello, but Maria did not recognize him and only watched as he walked away. However, her account changed once again. Maria had a confirmed alibi, which ultimately protected her from being accused. She attributed her behavior to fear and severe stress, and ultimately, she was crossed off the list of suspects. Unfortunately, Maria's troubles were just beginning. One of the suspects was a man named Salvatore Ferraro, who out to be an assistant in philosophy and law. Maria identified him, and he quickly began cooperating with the police. She felt compelled to do this under the threat of being charged. According to her, he resembled the young man who had exited office number 6 when she entered, but she remained uncertain until the very end. The story underwent frequent changes, likely due to the ongoing pressure on Maria. The first interrogation lasted 14 hours, after which investigators repeatedly approached her, increasing the pressure. It is unclear if Maria can be considered a reliable source, but the detectives were determined to find the killer at any cost. To verify her statements, they conducted numerous interrogations with other individuals connected to office number 6. These witnesses provided inconsistent testimonies that did not align with one another. In light of this, the investigators worked hard to piece the information together. At one point, Bruno Romano, the university director, intervened. She expressed her dissatisfaction with the police's handling of the case and pointed out several violations she had observed. Her main concern was that the investigation was not allowing lawyers to be present during witness interviews. Because of her complaints, the director herself became a suspect, now under investigation for allegedly covering up for the killer to protect the university from problems. Under public pressure, the police sought to find a suspect, but all the individuals they considered had solid alibis. The focus then shifted to Gabriella Aletto, the secretary of the university head. Maria reported that Gabriella had been in office number 6 before the attack. The police began to put serious pressure on Gabriella, even threatening her. In parallel, they established wiretapping of the phone in the office where she worked, and there were even plans to install a hidden camera. During her conversations with investigators, Gabriella faced explicit threats. They warned her that if she didn't identify the murderer, she would be accused of the crime herself. On the 45th anniversary of the incident, Gabriella, wanting to protect her career and personal life, stated that she was far from office number 6 and had no knowledge of who might be responsible for the murder. She emphasized that an illness she had endured for years prevented her use of weapons. The detectives were so eager to resolve the case that they even brought in doctors to verify her medical condition. They interrogated Gabriella relentlessly, including her son-in-law, who worked in law enforcement, to pressure her into confessing. Despite being a relative, he played a role in forcing her to confess. The other detectives departed, leaving Gabriella alone with her son-in-law. Despite the circumstances, he was unable to extract a confession from her. The only thing she admitted was that she had been in office number 6. The absence of lawyers added to the complications of the situation, driving Gabriella into despair. Besides, on June 11, authorities decided to arrest director Bruno Romano, charging him with aiding and abetting the murderer, as it was suspected he was covering up for the crime. Later, when criminal cases were brought against all participants in the investigation for abuse of office, the prosecutor insisted that this was a trick to scare those involved. Gabriella, feeling the weight of the intimidation, especially following the arrest of the director, lost her composure out of fear. Eventually, she revealed that on the day of the murder, she saw 2 men in office number 6. One of them drew a weapon when Marta Russo and her friend were positioned between the window and the opposite wall. He attacked, causing Marta to fall. Gabriella also recalled that the young men appeared panicked and clearly did not expect to kill anyone, as they ran away in fear. Witnesses identified the gunman as Salvatore Ferraro. The second man was recognized as Giovanni Scattoni, a 29-year-old philosophy assistant. After receiving the confessions, the detectives were able to piece together all the information. Initially, the young men did not appear to be the type to commit a cold-blooded murder. Even unintentionally, the investigators were not troubled by the fact that Salvatore and Giovanni were not acquainted with Marta and had no motive. They repeatedly denied their guilt, but the Gabriella's confession making it difficult to deny. A major issue for Salvatore arose from the searches conducted in his apartment, where forensic books about the ideal crime were discovered. Investigators quickly assumed that this suggested he had plans for a perfect murder. Although Salvatore argued that he needed this material for his university research, the investigators pointed out that forensic science is not typically a focus for philosophers. However, there was a significant problem. The detectives have been unable to find the weapon that killed Marta. During the trial, both Salvatore and Giovanni maintained their calm demeanor and continued to assert their innocence. There was no direct evidence linking them to the crime, yet the prosecution labeled them as ruthless murderers. Although the prosecution presented evidence from Gabriella, but the jury was out on this. They focused on the traces of gunpowder found on the windowsill of office number 6 and the bullet's trajectory, overlooking the fact that this information was largely inaccurate and speculative. Witnesses who had endured long periods of torture testified. The trial photos clearly showed that Gabriella and Maria struggled to conceal their fear. This situation echoed the experience of a security guard who had seen the defendants in office number 6. He had been a suspect in the case, but chose to cooperate with the police and was later cleared of any suspicion. During the trial, Gabriella recounted how the defendants fled the university after the attack, but this did not prove their involvement in the case. The defense lawyers for the students pointed out that the particles found on the windowsill were not from weapon, but rather from car exhaust. This suggested that the attack could have originated from a different window, potentially implicating other individuals. The lawyer argued that the witness testimonies were exaggerated. Experts, based on their reconstruction of the events, believed that Marta's death resulted from a tragic accident during a reckless game. The attack occurred accidentally due to a series of ricochets hitting her head, which would classify it as manslaughter. By the end of the trial in 2001, both defendants were found guilty. Giovanni received a reduced sentence of 5 years for manslaughter and unlawful possession of firearms, initially sentenced to 7 years. Salvatore involved in the torture of women, but had all charges dropped by university officials. After their convictions, they appealed their sentences, prompting a review. The Supreme Court upheld Giovanni's manslaughter sentence, but dismissed the illegal possession charge. Consequently, Giovanni's prison time was shortened to 5 years, and he was ordered to pay €300,000 in legal fees. This case raises many questions, as there is still uncertainty about the guilt of Giovanni and Salvatore, making it a highly controversial situation. However, some supporters feel that justice has been served. The victims of the police officers' actions spoke out, expressing their dissatisfaction, leading to significant public outcry in internal investigations. Their accounts were corroborated by strong evidence, which included several interrogation recordings that contained threats. These victims have expressed their concerns to investigators. Gabriella reported feeling intimidated and unsafe, and she highlighted the lack of legal representation during interrogations. This action was risky, as it was believed that the police might have support. So, their appeal led to a new investigation. Unfortunately, it quickly ended with no police officers facing any consequences. Gabriella and Maria have long been free and are continuing their lives. Gabriella, now over 50, is a philosophy teacher in Rome who has had to decline several opportunities and faces criticism. Salvatore Ferraro works as a lawyer. He writes books, appears in shows, and helps those who have suffered from injustice and cruelty. The most troubling aspect is that if there was indeed a miscarriage of justice, Marta's killer is still at large. To help alleviate some of the pain caused by this situation, an exception was made for Marta's family. Marta's mother was permitted to embrace the woman who has survived for 20 years thanks to Marta's heart. She is grateful for this gift, recognizing that through this generous act, a part of Marta lives on in others. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Jennifer Schuett. Jennifer Schuett was an 8-year-old girl who had just finished school for the day. She lived with her single mother, Elaine, who worked hard to ensure that her daughter was happy and well taken care of. Elaine juggled multiple jobs to support their family and give Jennifer a joyful childhood. With all the love and attention she received, Jennifer grew into a bright and cheerful child, showing a strong enthusiasm for learning and a natural curiosity at such a young age. Jennifer mentioned that children often fear the dark, and she was no different. She admitted that she was afraid of the dark and often slept in the same room as her mother. She recalled that from what she could remember about her childhood, she just didn't like the dark or sleeping alone, and so she felt comforted by going to bed with her mom. She stated that it was just the two of them, and they relied on each other. That night, on August 9, 2009, Jennifer and her mother, Elaine, shared a room. Jennifer was restless, tossing and turning and occasionally kicking her mom, which made it hard for Elaine to fall asleep. At 2:30 a.m., Elaine woke up and asked Jennifer to return to her own room since she had to get up early for work. In response, Jennifer said, "Mom, I love you, so I'm going to sleep in my own room tonight," and went back to her room. Elaine would later deeply regret this decision, but at that moment, she had no way of knowing what would happen next. The next morning, Elaine found that Jennifer was missing when she went to wake her up. She saw that the window facing the parking lot was wide open. Elaine quickly called 911. When the police arrived, she explained that she hadn't heard any sounds or screams after Jennifer went to her room. It's important to note that their apartment was on the first floor, and Jennifer's windows overlooked the parking lot. This made Elaine worry that someone might have seen Jennifer and entered her room through the window. Elaine understood that their apartment wasn't the best place for her and her young daughter, but it was all they could afford at that time. However, Elaine's parents stepped in to assist her and their granddaughter by buying a small house nearby and renovating it. Jennifer and her mother were set to move into the new house in a few months. The day before Jennifer went missing, they had been working in the garden there, where Jennifer had been bitten by mosquitoes, making it difficult for her to sleep peacefully that night. After her daughter went missing, Elaine was heartbroken. She expressed that Jennifer was her only child and begged for her safe return. The police dedicated themselves to finding her. Fortunately, Elaine received news sooner than expected. Later that day, around 6:30 p.m., the police got a call from parents whose children were playing in a field and discovered something alarming. To their shock, they realized it was a young girl. When the police arrived at the scene, they found 8-year-old Jennifer Schuett's body in the middle of the field, 5 kilometers from her home. Jennifer was in a serious condition, but she was still breathing. She had a deep cut across her throat. The most life-threatening injury was this wound, which led to significant blood loss and left her very pale and weak. She was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, where doctors worked hard to save her life. One doctor recalled that when he first saw Jennifer in the emergency room, she was a fairly small 8-year-old, very pale, and covered with ant bites and scratches on her back. He mentioned that she couldn't make any sounds because of the injury to her neck. Fortunately, he added that after the operation, Jennifer's condition stabilized and the bleeding stopped. He stated that they had completed her surgery, her airway was stable, and she wasn't bleeding, so they were very hopeful about her survival. When she regained consciousness after the surgery, her behavior underwent a sudden change. It turned out that she was afraid of all men. She later recounted that she had been kind of a hard patient to deal with because she had a lot of male doctors, and she was scared of males. Additionally, the Dickinson Police Department deployed a whole team to guard her hospital room. Throughout this time, Jennifer was in a constant state of panic. She even hit a doctor in the stomach when he tried to approach her. Elaine tried to comfort her daughter by explaining that everyone present was there to help her. Despite this, Jennifer remained distrustful of those around her. Her behavior became clearer when she disclosed what had happened to her that night. An investigator noted that they knew they had a survivor who couldn't speak and that the challenge was getting information from her. After all, she was only 8 years old, so it was tough. Because Jennifer was too scared to speak directly to the investigator, the detectives provided her with a notebook and pens. They asked her to write down her answers to their questions. Jennifer communicated through notes to her mother, who then relayed the note to the officer. Surprisingly, her written responses were very detailed and accurately described the events. Despite her young age, Jennifer demonstrated impressive intelligence. According to the note, that night, Jennifer entered her room, turned on the light, and picked up a book to read, hoping it would make her sleepy. It worked, and she soon fell asleep. Suddenly, she woke up to find the stranger carrying her out of the house. She said that he was running with her down the sidewalk and that she tried to scream, but he covered her nose and mouth. Afterward, he put her in a car and identified himself as an undercover police officer. Immediately, Jennifer felt that something was off, as she noticed her mother's car in the parking lot, which left her puzzled about their destination. While she understood that police are generally trusted, her mother had always warned her not to trust strangers. Jennifer recalled that as a child, she had wanted to believe the stranger, but the lessons she had learned about strangers in school, along with her fear of the dark, told her that something was seriously wrong. When they passed her grandparents' house, Jennifer suggested that he could drop her off there, but he replied that he couldn't because they were not home. At that moment, she realized that he was lying since their car was parked in the driveway. The man had stopped near Jennifer's school, which was about 3 kilometers from her house. He had told her to watch the moon closely and said that when it changed color, her mother would arrive to pick her up. Jennifer recalled waiting anxiously for her mother's headlights, but they never appeared. At that moment, she sensed that the man was mentally preparing himself for his true intentions. After 5 minutes, the stranger remarked that her mom wasn't coming, so they needed to go farther. He then drove a few more blocks to a dead-end street and stopped the car. Jennifer once again sought confirmation that he was a genuine policeman. She mentioned that she was questioning him and needed him to prove he was an officer. She asked him where his gun and badge were. He responded that his gun was in the back seat of the car. As Jennifer turned to look for it, the suspicious officer removed her underwear. Jennifer lost track of time while in the stranger's grip because she passed out. She only became aware of her surroundings again when he was pulling her by her ankles through the field. Despite the intense pain caused by twigs and stones pressing into her back, she acted as if she were dead and remained silent, knowing that this was her opportunity to survive. He eventually released her feet and left her alone in the field. Jennifer heard him walking away, followed by the sound of his car door slamming and the engine starting as he drove off. She realized that she couldn't scream and didn't understand why. She managed to place her right hand on her neck and felt a deep wound. Looking at her hand, she saw it covered in blood. Since the exact time of her disappearance was unknown, it was thought that she lay in the field for 12 to 14 hours. As the sun set, she noticed the lights of passing cars nearby. She heard children's voices and a dog that approached her several times, seemingly trying to get its owner's attention, but the owner never came. During this time, she was bitten by fire ants, which helped her stay awake. Jennifer stated that every time she regained consciousness, she was shocked that she was still alive. She said she wasn't afraid and had accepted that she might not survive. Suddenly, she heard children's voices nearby, and then something hit her leg. When Jennifer next regained consciousness, she heard a police officer saying, "You've been found. You're going to be okay. Just please stay with me." She remembered being loaded into the life flight helicopter. This experience was very difficult for young Jennifer because she couldn't speak and had to communicate by writing everything down. Her fear of men added to the tension, so her mother asked the questions, and Jennifer's responses were passed on to the officers outside the door. Remarkably, 8-year-old Jennifer was able to get the stranger's name. "I just remember recalling his name, so I wrote that he said his name was Dennis. I remember thinking he looked greasy and that he might have had a scar or something on his face." For days after Jennifer went missing, the police enlisted the help of forensic expert Lois Gibson. She communicated with Jennifer using gestures and notes. Despite these difficulties, they created a detailed composite sketch of a man, which was released to the public in hopes of receiving information. While this was happening, police searched the crime scene and discovered Jennifer's clothing about half a mile away, along with a man's shirt and underwear. Unfortunately, DNA testing on the clothing did not yield any matches to a suspect. Jennifer's recovery took time, but she demonstrated incredible strength for someone her age. There was a particularly tough moment when she became upset over a chocolate bar she couldn't eat, screamed in frustration, and made a faint sound. Doctors were surprised because her vocal cords had been nearly severed, and they didn't expect them to heal, yet they started to recover. Soon after, Jennifer was released from the hospital. She returned home and resumed her studies. After finishing school and college, she chose to become a children's librarian. However, she never forgot the traumatic events of that night. Every day felt like a search for her attacker. She wondered if he could be anyone around her. Could it be our new neighbor? Someone at the post office or the grocery store? Is he watching us? Will he come back to finish what he started? Fortunately, Jennifer met a man named Jonathan, and for the first time in years, she felt she could trust someone. They fell in love. Meanwhile, the investigation into her attacker stalled. The chances of finding him diminished as time passed, and the case remained unresolved, moving from one investigator to another without progress. 18 years after that dreadful night, Jennifer received a phone call. She learned that Detective Tim Cromie would be taking over her case and that he wanted to meet with her. Tim Cromie promised to do everything possible to catch the criminal, and Jennifer believed him. He told her that he would do whatever he could in his power until the end of his career to get her the answers she needed for the case. Tim decided to involve FBI Special Agent Richard Renison in the case. Richard had previously worked for the Dickinson, Texas Police Department before joining the FBI. Together, Tim and Richard uncovered a significant amount of evidence collected on the day Jennifer went missing and shortly after she was found. Key pieces of evidence included Jennifer's underwear, as well as the perpetrator's shirt and underwear. They sent a DNA sample found on these items to the lab in Quantico, Virginia. While detectives recognized that DNA analysis technology had improved significantly over the past 19 years, they also knew that the age of the case would make it less of a priority in the lab. Investigating cold cases often comes with the challenge of time, as witnesses forget, people move away, and some may even pass away. However, one advantage of this case's age was the advancements in DNA technology that could aid their investigation. A year later, their efforts were finally recognized. The man whose DNA was discovered at the crime scene was Dennis Earl Bradford, the same name that Jennifer had identified years earlier. Remarkably, the 8-year-old girl had been extremely precise in her descriptions. Despite being on pain medication, unable to speak, and only 8 years old, she wrote down the name Dennis. This was a significant indication of her accuracy. In fact, it later became clear just how precise she was about many details. Dennis Bradford, now 39, lived in North Little Rock, Arkansas, and his DNA had been entered into the national database after he assaulted a woman in a bar in 1996. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison but only served 4. On February 4, 2000, he was conditionally released, and less than a year later, he was arrested for driving under the influence, just half a mile from his home. He remarried and worked as a welder until his arrest in 2009. Tim Cromie and Richard Renison looked into the connection between a suspect from North Little Rock, Arkansas, and Dickinson, Texas, a small town. They discovered that the man had been arrested in Dickinson in 1987, 3 years before Jennifer's attack. At that time, he had 2 addresses located within 2 miles of Jennifer and Elaine's apartment. To verify that he was the kidnapper, detectives requested a 19-year-old photo from his driver's license. When they saw the photo, they were shocked because it resembled the composite sketch made with input from 8-year-old Jennifer. One detective asked if Dennis had ever heard the name Jennifer Shuett, to which he replied affirmatively. The detective then inquired if Dennis had ever had the occasion to come into contact with her, and the suspect again confirmed this. When asked to elaborate, Dennis hesitated, stating that it was a lot to explain, but he believed that if the detective were to see her, he would be extremely proud of her. Finally, and the suspect stated that Jennifer was alive, repeating that she was alive. The detective reacted with disbelief, exclaiming, "Oh God." The suspect responded by saying that the detective had no idea how hard he had prayed for that, mentioning that he was a believer in Christ but had no idea about her status. He added that it was just about 2 days later when he ran away and took off. Dennis Earl Bradford was arrested on October 19, 2009. He claimed he didn't know Jennifer, couldn't remember why he had stopped near her apartment, and didn't understand why he had acted so cruelly towards her. Bradford also shared a significant detail that investigators were unaware of. After the attack, he felt intense guilt. He wanted to pull the trigger but ultimately changed his mind. Following this, he was admitted to a psychiatric ward, which was the same hospital where Jennifer was still receiving treatment at that time. He had been very close to her at that time. Immediately after the interrogation, detectives informed Jennifer that the criminal they had been searching for 19 years had been arrested. Jennifer expressed that when they called her that morning and told her that they had really arrested Dennis Bradford, it was the most moment of her life and meant everything to her. She conveyed her gratitude to the detectives for fulfilling their promise and, above all, wanted to thank Detective Tim Cromie from the Dickinson Police Department and Special Agent Richard Renison from the FBI for all their hard work and dedication over the last year and a half. She emphasized that their promise from day one, never giving up on her case and hearing her voice while seeing her determination, meant a lot to her. Jennifer also admitted her anticipation of facing Dennis Bradford in the courtroom since he was willing to plead guilty and not drag out the trial. Jennifer was given the opportunity to select a court date and chose August 10th, the 20th anniversary of the attack. She mentioned that she remembered staying up late, endless nights, trying to perfect her victim impact statement, writing, erasing, and writing again, just trying to perfect what she wanted to say. She said that she had 19 years worth of things to say to that person. However, it was not meant to happen. On May 10, 2010, a few months before the trial, Dennis hung in his jail cell, which made her feel that her right to see the case through to the end had been taken away. Jennifer went to Dennis's grave and read aloud what she wanted to say in court, stating that Dennis Bradford had chosen the wrong little 8-year-old girl to try and murder because for 19 years, she had thought of him every single day and had helped in searching for him. She expressed that in her heart, she knew he was out there, and now she realized that by listening to her heart all those years and never giving up on finding him, she had been right. After finishing her speech, Jennifer turned to her husband and wondered if Dennis had hurt her. At that moment, a fiery ant bit her leg, and she took it as a sign from God that he had heard her loud and clear. Jennifer reflected on her experiences, mentioning that despite the horrific events caused by Dennis's actions, she faced yet another challenge in her life. She explained that as a result of the trauma, she almost lost the ability to conceive a child. However, she noted that amidst the darkness, there were shining examples of kindness, particularly from Dr. Craig Witz, who, after hearing her story, generously offered his services to her twice, free of charge. She shared that at the end of 2012, she and her partner welcomed their daughter Jenna and later their son Jonah, expressing her disbelief by saying that it felt like a dream and questioning who would have thought that they would really be her happy ending. The criminal tried to silence her and take away her right to be a mother, but he failed. Jennifer desires for her story to be shared, not for her own sake, but for others who have endured similar ordeals and must cope with them every day. She mentioned that they have gone through something in life that they can talk about, and she believes it is worth sharing it with others to instill hope. She expressed her hope that this would inspire others to use their voice to help someone else. Jennifer also added that, in the end, she is not a victim but instead victorious. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Mikhail Bush. Mikhail Bush was born on February 13, 1997, in Alberta, Canada. She is the eldest of 2 daughters. She attended a local high school, where she met Cody McConnell. They began their relationship in the summer of 2014. Later their relationship blossomed and they decided to start a family together. After graduating, Mikhail worked at a public organization that supported people with disabilities by finding nurses and meeting their needs. There, she realized her passion for helping people. At work, She learned the basics of healthcare and decided to pursue a career in nursing. To achieve this, she needed formal training, so Mikhail enrolled at Northwest College in Edmonton. She devoted all her free time to studying, determined to become a skilled professional. Working in the medical field in Canada is respected and well paid. This meant that pursuing a major that she loved would allow her to support their small family. Her relationship with Cody grew stronger, and he supported her in her studies. At that time, they lived together. In 2019, shortly after graduating, she found out she was pregnant. This was an important and anticipated event for the young couple, and they were very excited. Everything went as well as could be. Their dream of expanding their family became a reality. Soon after, the young couple got married and began preparing for their future child. On April 17, 2020, they welcomed a son named Noah McConnell. After his birth, Mikhail and Cody devoted themselves to taking care of their child and supported each other wholeheartedly. At this time, Mikhail and Cody lived happily together. Noah was a very cute child. He rarely cried, and when he did, it usually stopped very quickly. However, a few months later, Cody had difficulty working and was easily tired, so his wife Mikhail advised him to go to the hospital. After the examination, Cody was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Because of this, he lost his job. Cody was on sick leave for a long time, but during this time, they always supported and understood each other. The couple tried their best to maintain their happiness. After a while, Cody was able to return to his job. He worked in the installation of turboprop engines, a job that required frequent business trips to different cities. This sudden change in lifestyle naturally affected the family. At that time, Mikhail was a housewife, taking care of her children without a regular job. In order to avoid being apart for a long time, they decided to buy a mobile home. Life on the road was difficult, but the family stayed together. By August 2020, their life had undergone significant positive changes. Cody secured a higher-paying job, allowing him to spend more time at home. The couple traveled frequently to different locations, but they had the opportunity to rent an apartment in Hinton, Alberta. This small town is 3 hours west of Edmonton, near Jasper National Park. The move, which meant they no longer had to live on the road, marked a long-awaited change in their family life. In early September, the couple and their child moved into their new home. The apartment was much more spacious than their previous home and certainly larger than the small trailer they had been living in. Cody could finally settle down with his family and focus on building a life together. However, the young couple had no idea that their happiness would soon turn into a nightmare so severe that a change in the law would be necessary. On September 16, 2021, in Canada, the day started like any other morning for the family. Cody took his child for a walk and they spent money on entertainment, something they could not afford before. Now that life had improved, Cody was able to spend more time with his 16-month-old son. Cody then went to work as usual, leaving his wife at home. His shift ended around 5 or 6 p.m., and he returned home, eager to spend more time with his son. However, when he got home, the apartment was quiet. The child did not respond to his name or make any noises as usual. The silence was alarming. After searching all the rooms, Cody realized that his family was actually not home, which was unusual. Cody thought that his wife might have gone to the store with the baby for a while. But upon closer inspection, he realized that was unlikely, as the stroller was still in the apartment, neatly folded and untouched. Without the stroller, they would not have gone for a walk, and his wife's car was still parked outside, which made him even more worried. Cody ran around the apartment screaming, but the silence made him suspicious. In the kitchen, he discovered another worrying sign. His wife had started cooking dinner but had stopped abruptly. The groceries were still on the table, some cut and some still intact. It seemed like something had interrupted her, which made Cody extremely worried. He tried calling his wife but couldn't get through. With no answer and growing increasingly worried, he decided to take action. Although he didn't want to believe that anything bad had happened, he hoped they had just gone to a nearby park or plaza and lost track of time. Desperate to find her, he set off immediately. With increasing anxiety, he searched alleys and parks but found no trace of his wife and son. After going through the area around the apartment complex several times, he contacted friends and family, hoping that she was with someone he knew. However, no one heard or saw her all day. Around 7 p.m., in desperation, Cody called the police to report that his wife and son were missing. Cody called a friend named Jareth, who came to their home to help. Together, they began searching the neighborhood, still hoping to find Mikhail and his son without police intervention. They checked the apartment again and walked around the entire apartment complex several times. Unable to calm down, they began going from apartment to apartment, knocking on doors and asking neighbors if they had seen or heard anything. When the police arrived, Cody and Jarrett were still searching. The police had to calm them down. Since Cody and Jareth were not professionals, their search could disrupt or destroy important evidence. Therefore, the police instructed them to stop their search efforts. The police thoroughly searched the apartment, the surrounding residential area, and nearby squares and parks, but like Cody, they were unable to find anything. Cody's next-door neighbor, Robert, told the police that he had witnessed an unknown man running out of Cody's apartment that day. Although he could not provide further details, the neighbor's account raised suspicions. Therefore, the police decided to consult with the apartment manager to gain access to surveillance camera footage. They wanted to determine when and why Mikhail and the child disappeared, whether she had run away or been kidnapped. There was speculation that a lover might have been involved, but Cody adamantly denied this. He said he had a happy family. Initially, police found no signs of forced entry, struggle, or blood in the family's apartment. Police also considered whether there had been a kidnapper. However, how could the perpetrator have entered without any signs of forced entry? It was probably someone Mikhail knew and trusted enough to open the door for. When police reviewed the surveillance footage, they found no evidence to support the neighbor's claim that a stranger had entered Mikhail's apartment. Instead of catching the mysterious stranger, the footage showed the neighbor taking a bag out of her apartment and throwing it in the apartment complex's trash bin. Mikhail and her son were not seen in the surveillance footage, raising suspicions about the neighbor's involvement in the disappearance. Meanwhile, Cody and Jarrett anxiously waited for news near home, eventually staying at another neighbor's apartment. Cody was expecting his wife and child to return. At 2 a.m., at the apartment where Cody was staying, the police knocked on the door. However, they did not have good news for Cody. Instead, they asked him to move to a hotel while the investigation was ongoing. The police stated that waiting was useless. They needed to take a closer look at the apartment and the area around the house. In fact, the police did not come by accident. They did not want to tell Cody that his child had been found dead, because they had to confirm the prime suspect. The next morning, Cody, who had not slept all night, went to the police station for questioning after leaving his home. The police asked him the usual questions to piece together the events of the previous day. However, many of the questions left him confused, leading him to suspect that something was wrong. The police then revealed that Noah's body was found in a trash can inside the residence. Noah had been strangled, with a man's sock in her mouth and a plastic bag over her head. Some of Mikhail's belongings were found, but her body was not found. Chance for his wife and children to return home safely was gone. Receiving news from the police, he was horrified and in pain when his child died tragically. During the night, Cody was asked to leave the apartment because the police did not want to draw attention to the arrest of the neighbor who lived next door. The police, skeptical of the neighbor Robert's story, visited him again and asked to check his apartment, where the police found a body in the bathroom. She was small and lying face down, but the worst part was that her entire body had been cut into pieces. Experts found evidence of sexual violence committed after her death. The McHales had only moved into the complex a few weeks ago. They had barely had time to see some of the neighbors. With Robert, they had hardly ever seen him. Cody thought they had a quiet, unassuming neighbor who didn't want to draw attention to himself. Robert kept his distance from everyone. Now, it was clear that the most dangerous guy was living among them, but no one knew about it. What the neighbors didn't know was that Robert Maid had been arrested on suspicion of murder and child abuse. During a background check, police discovered that Robert had a criminal record with 24 convictions, including 2 for sexual violence. He was first charged with a felony for assaulting a girl in the early 2000s. It is unclear whether he ever served any prison time for this crime. Then, in 2012, Robert was charged with a brutal sex crime. He posed as a nanny to gain the trust of a couple and, when he picked up their child, raped the child instead of going for a walk in the park. He is suspected of being involved in other similar incidents. Robert was arrested and convicted for this crime, but only served 3 years. While in prison, he attended a special rehabilitation program for sex offenders, received psychological support, and attended church regularly. Robert was released from prison after psychiatrists deemed him ready to re-enter society. However, this assessment proved to be incorrect. Just a few years after his release, he expressed a desire to harm innocent people. The police reviewed his test results while in prison and found that he had not been rehabilitated. Instead, he preferred to attack children and young women for the thrill of it. Since there was no legal basis to detain him any longer, Edmonton police could only warn that Robert was dangerous and likely to harm someone again. This man was clearly a threat to women, and especially young children. In order to protect society from potential rapists, many restrictions were placed on him. Specifically, he was prohibited from being near children and women, and could not live near schools or parks. Robert was also subject to a curfew and could only leave Edmonton with official permission from his supervising police officer. After his release from prison, he strictly followed these regulations for many years. He was monitored, so he did not appear in crime reports. However, over time it became clear that he had been waiting for an opportunity to commit a crime. Under Canadian law, a convicted sex offender can be removed from the Dangerous Offender Register if they have not been involved in any similar incidents for a year. In June 2020, this happened to one such offender. Despite his extensive criminal history, a court decision removed the rapist from police supervision. This allowed him, to move to a new residential area, a move that had previously been restricted. Now, he is unsupervised and unmonitored. The public was outraged by the tragic situation. By removing the restrictions on the offender, the police endangered the lives of women and children in the area. Cody said people deserved to know that they were living near a dangerous rapist, giving them the opportunity to relocate if necessary. The investigation found that 2 victims were killed before police were notified. It was discovered that Robert and the victims were just neighbors in a senior housing complex. They did not know or communicate with each other. During questioning, Robert openly confessed to these motives. As before, he informed the police staff. He struggled with the urge to kill and physically abuse at the same time. He admitted that he was a sick person who needed to be prayed for and confessed that he enjoyed the process. Robert believed that he needed to be isolated from society, otherwise, he feared that he would repeat his actions. Cody, who had just lost his entire family, was visited by his brothers, friends, co-workers, neighbors, and concerned citizens who came to pay their respects. It was believed that if there had not been a system error, the police would have continued to monitor this dangerous criminal and Mikhail would still be alive. Cody attended all the hearings, wearing his wife's wedding ring around his neck and carrying a blue blanket. Deeply saddened, he was determined to defend his rights. Even through tears, he insisted that ordinary citizens should be informed about potentially dangerous criminals living nearby. Until recently, ordinary Canadians did not have access to databases of dangerous criminals. Wanting to protect other families, Cody McConnell launched a campaign to change the existing laws. The effort, dubbed Noah's Law in honor of his young son, Robert pleaded guilty to all charges and recounted the events of that day in court. He said that after Cody left for work, Cody's wife and son went for a walk in a nearby park. When they returned home, they encountered the apartment manager. The manager informed Mikhail that Cody had made a mess in the hallway the day before and asked him to clean it up. Sure enough, Cody had made a mess the day before, leaving a mark. Mikhail apologized for the mess and promised to clean it up, she planning to do so later. At that moment, Robert overheard the conversation and saw it as the perfect opportunity to act. Mikhail entered the apartment with the child, fed Noah, and planned to put him to bed. While the child was playing, Mikhail began cooking dinner and called her friend. During the phone conversation, there was a knock on the door. The friend later testified that she had heard the knock, although it was faint due to the distance. Robert offered to help clean up since she was busy watching the child. The woman thanked him for his help and agreed. Her conversation with her friend then ended. After cleaning up, Robert found an excuse to enter Mikhail's apartment. When he gained access to her home, suddenly, Robert attacked her, strangling her with his hands for about 10 minutes. Even then, Mikhail still showed signs of life, so Robert took an electrical cord from an appliance and wrapped it around her neck until she stopped breathing. He raped her, then quietly dragged her to his apartment through the hallway, placing her in the bathroom. Robert then took a knife and inflicted wounds on her body, even removing some of her organs. The police could not find these organs during the investigation and they were not found in the trash cans, like Noah. Meanwhile, the child was still alive and in the apartment. However, Robert considered the child a threat, so he decided to get rid of the child. He took the child to his apartment and tried to gag the child with a sock. He then suffocated the child by placing a plastic bag over his head. He then placed the body in a trash bag and threw it in a dumpster. During the trial, Robert's behavior was inconsistent. He insists that he is not a bad person and blames mental health issues. However, he also admits that he needs to be separated from society. The idea is that criminals should never be removed from the database if they pose an increased threat. There should be increased police surveillance without any time limits. It is also suggested that residents in nearby areas should be notified if there is a potentially dangerous person living near them. Cody stated that he would never move his family into the same apartment complex as someone like Robert. Currently, the dissemination of requests and proposals to protect the rights of all residents in the country continues. This theme resonates and continues to grow. During the trial, Robert Keith Major, 55, was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Aisling Murphy. Aisling Murphy, born in 1998, was the youngest of 3 siblings. Her family lived in Blue Ball, Ireland, a peaceful town about an hour's drive from Dublin. Aisling grew up in a loving environment, influenced by her father's passion for music, particularly the bagpipes and violin. Inspired by him, she began studying traditional Irish music. She joined a youth choir in school and later became part of an orchestra, performing folk music at various events across Ireland and Great Britain. She was talented, independent, and sociable, which allowed her to integrate well with her team and feel comfortable on stage. After graduating from school, Aisling quickly sought employment. She was determined to achieve complete independence from her parents, so she began searching for full-time job opportunities right after receiving her diploma. Despite her career ambitions, she continued to nurture her love for music. She often performed for her relatives during special family gatherings on weekends, which further strengthened their connections. Aisling wanted to create her own family someday, but first, she focused on establishing herself. She went to college and became a first-grade teacher at a school where she had previously studied. This moment in her life was very meaningful. The teachers and students appreciated Aisling for her energy, kindness, and creativity. Aisling was truly suited for this role due to her strong moral character. She made a smooth transition from being an excellent student to becoming a wonderful teacher. Aisling was friendly, well-mannered, sweet, and self-assured. During her first week of work, she taught music on weekends, showing her passion for her job and her enjoyment of working with children. At 28, she had been in a relationship with her boyfriend, Ryan, for over 6 years. They met when Aisling was just 15. Initially, their romance didn't last, and they broke up after a few months. However, they eventually reunited, realizing that they were too young when they first started dating as teenagers. Their feelings for each other reignited, and they fell deeply in love, often talking about their future, including marriage and children. They had planned a trip in 2 days, but unfortunately, it seemed their dreams would not come to fruition. Aisling finished her workday and planned to go for a run along the Grand Canal in Tullamore. This was a routine activity for her, as she enjoyed fitness and outdoor recreation. She loved walking or running in beautiful locations, so she often visited the canal when she could. The Grand Canal was a popular spot for runners, featuring a designated path for walking. It was usually busy, which made Aisling comfortable going there alone. After work, Aisling got ready for her run. She first went home to change her clothes and tell her mother about her schedule. Her mother reassured her daughter that she was old enough to take care of herself and that there was no danger in this. Aisling left, and that was the last time her mother saw her alive. About an hour after Aisling left home, 2 runners warming up along the Grand Canal called for help. They were running on one side of the canal and saw a man attacking a girl on the opposite bank. Since they didn't have mobile phones, they ran to the nearest payphone to report the incident. They informed the emergency dispatcher that they had witnessed a threatening man assaulting one of the female runners. The witnesses confirmed that the victim was still alive when the attacker dragged her into the bushes. She screamed and fought back, desperately trying to push him away, but she was clearly outmatched. The dispatchers sent police officers to the specified location. Upon arrival, the police and a witness found the body of a young woman at the canal. The young girl, who showed no signs of life, was found to have been severely beaten, as the caller had reported. She had been pulled off the paved road and into the bushes, where she suffered physical abuse. Her face and neck were covered in cuts, and her hair was matted with dried blood. Paramedics arrived and attempted to resuscitate her for 10 minutes, but they were unable to save her and confirmed her death. While the exact cause of death remained unclear, it was evident she had been beaten badly. The body of the murdered girl was sent for an autopsy, which revealed stab and cut wounds on her neck. A forensic expert identified 11 injuries, primarily on the right side of her neck, including a cut throat that rendered her unable to call for help. Signs of possible strangulation were also found. The victim was identified as Aisling Murphy. On her hands, there were deep cuts, likely sustained during a struggle. Keys were discovered near her body, and it was determined she had used them defensively, gripping them tightly in an effort to fight off her attacker. The weapon used in the attack did not inflict enough damage to prevent the criminal from continuing his assault. Aisling died from severe blood loss caused by multiple stab wounds to her neck, leading to her death within minutes. Near her body, police found sunglasses and a mobile phone in her jacket pocket. An abandoned bicycle was also found nearby, likely belonging to the attacker. The criminal had already fled the scene after harming his innocent victim. The brutality of the attack was shocking, especially since it occurred in broad daylight in a crowded area with witnesses. 2 runners who were in the vicinity witnessed the crime. They observed both the attack and the assailant. They provided vital information to the police. The first witness, Emma, reported that she was walking her dog by the Grand Canal when she noticed a girl jogging. She saw a man on a bright green bicycle closely following the jogger. Initially, Emma thought they might be running together because the cyclist stayed so close to the girl. She described the cyclist as looking like a migrant, not Irish. He had yellowish skin, a short haircut, and was wearing a black tracksuit with red logos. Later, Emma met another witness, Jenna, and together they witnessed the cyclist attack the girl. The attack appeared sudden and unprovoked. Jenna witnessed the attack and provided a detailed account. Her description matched that of another witness, who reported that the victim screamed, threatening the attacker, but then suddenly fell silent. This silence was caused by a wound to Aisling's neck that severely severed her vocal cords. Later, Jenna screamed loudly, threatening to call the police. Despite the threats, the attacker did not let go of the victim. Police found a green bicycle near the trail that belonged to the attacker. Meanwhile, police gathered more evidence and discovered that Aisling had been wearing a fitness tracker while running. The device recorded her body metrics, including speed, distance, and heart rate, helping to clarify the details surrounding her death. The data showed that Aisling started running at 2:51 p.m., and before that, GPS records showed she had parked her bike near the canal. After that, her pulse was around 100 beats per minute, indicating she was in an active phase. She maintained this heart rate until 15:21, during which she ran approximately 3 kilometers. However, after 15:21, her heart rate changed. The Aisling experienced erratic fluctuations, and GPS data showed she was standing still at that time. This was clearly when she was attacked, and by 15:31, her heart had stopped beating. The next step for the police was to review footage from surveillance cameras in the area. Police identified the locations of all recording devices, hoping to find video that would show the suspect, the victim, and the attack itself. Police checked surveillance cameras, focusing on the time frame between 12:25 and 16:05, and were able to identify a man who matched the witness description exactly. It appeared that he was moving randomly along the roads. They determined that this man had appeared long before Aisling's arrival and was using a bicycle identical to the one found at the crime scene. The prime suspect was wearing a black hoodless jacket and sweatpants with stripes down the side, and also had a red logo on his clothes, as Emma described. He had been following a woman in a dark burgundy jacket but was later spotted by her. He had been looking at the victim with interest, but for some unknown reason he quickly fell behind. In footage from another camera, the suspect stops at 1:53 p.m. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out an object. He is seen holding and twisting something in his hand, but the poor quality of the footage makes it difficult to determine what it is. Police suspect he pulled out a knife, which he then used to kill Aisling. A forensic expert concluded that Aisling was killed with a small serrated knife, as the wounds had jagged edges. The man was seen again on surveillance footage at around 2:55 p.m., just as Aisling began training on the trail. Police discovered that the suspect had been wandering around the area, apparently looking for victims, as he occasionally focused on different women. He followed these women at a distance but lost interest until he came across Aisling, whom he decided to attack. Unfortunately, the surveillance cameras did not capture high-quality images that could help identify the criminal. Hours after the attack, a suspect was arrested based on information from witnesses. The suspect, Griot Keegan, is a 39-year-old Romanian immigrant who has lived in Ireland for 23 years and has no criminal record. He matched the person seen on surveillance cameras and found near the scene of the attack. At the police station, he vehemently denied any involvement in the incident. While police were questioning him, police obtained a search warrant and thoroughly searched his house, but found no evidence of his guilt. Griot maintained that there had been a mistake. He provided an alibi that was verified. He had been in a store making a purchase, which was confirmed by his receipt and surveillance footage. After that, he was seen walking along the south bank of the canal while the murder occurred on the north bank. The suspect's fingerprints and DNA samples were collected to compare with skin particles found under the Aisling's nails and on the bicycle, but there was no match. This confirmed that he was not involved in the crime. He was cleared of all suspicions and released. However, for some time, he and his family received threats as local residents still viewed him as a murderer. He was temporarily provided with alternative housing, and the police issued a public statement clarifying that Griot was not connected to the crime. Only after this did the public stop harassing him. This case received wide publicity across the country. The local community was outraged by the attack on Aisling and called on the police to quickly identify and arrest the perpetrators responsible for the tragic death of a talented young woman in broad daylight. For days, police have been trying to piece together clues, and the situation has taken a surprising turn. On the evening following the attack, a 30-year-old man named Josef Puska was admitted to a hospital in Dublin with abdominal injuries. Josef was originally from a small village in Slovakia. He left school at 16 without finishing his education and spent most of his life working as a laborer in the Czech Republic. Although he faced challenges in his lifestyle and at school, Josef was not involved with bad influences, had no criminal record, and was generally seen as a positive individual. In 2015, he moved to Dublin, Ireland, where he and his wife planned to settle permanently. He continued his work as a builder, and during their time there, they welcomed 5 children. Everything seemed to be going well until he suffered a back injury at work. After his recovery, Josef found that he could not return to his previous activities. The back injury was more severe than he had anticipated, leading him to receive disability benefits. He spent a significant amount of time in the hospital, and afterward, he relied on state support. The financial situation was tight, so his wife had to work. Josef had limited proficiency in Irish and struggled with English, which made it difficult for him to communicate with medical staff. When he went to the hospital the day after Aisling's murder, he needed an interpreter for assistance. Thanks to the interpreter, Josef explained that he was in Blanchardstown the previous day, January 12th. He took a taxi there and noticed he was being followed as soon as he arrived, but he did not think much of it since it was daytime. Suddenly, the attackers assaulted him, stabbing him multiple times in the stomach before they ran away. He managed to get home, where he informed his family about the incident and called for an ambulance. Doctors discovered cuts on Josef's hands, signs of defensive wounds. He had multiple stab wounds in his abdomen and received painkillers before a 2-hour surgery. The surgery was completed around 10 o'clock. The doctors concluded that Josef's injuries were from stab wounds inflicted by a small knife, but they were not life-threatening. He remained in the hospital for several days to recover. As part of their protocol, the doctors informed the police about the incident. Officers came to speak with Josef, who was the victim of another attack. Police suspected that the same criminal who attacked Aisling might also be responsible for Yosef's injuries. During the conversation, Yosef's behavior became increasingly awkward and suspicious. He seemed confused, struggled to recall simple details, and appeared noticeably nervous. Police began to question whether this unemployed man could be connected to Aisling's murder. The next day, the police returned to the hospital to continue questioning and gather more details. This time, Yosef gave more specific answers. He explained that he had taken a taxi to the city to meet a woman he had met online. Yosef then revealed that he was married with 5 children but did not want his wife to know about his secret encounters. It was later discovered that he had registered on several dating websites and was regularly seeing different women. His wife remained unaware of his affair, as Yosef was very careful to keep it a secret. The police asked Yosef if he owned a bicycle. He replied that he had a green bicycle that he had used for a long time. However, when they inquired whether he had been riding it on the day of the murder, Yosef started to stutter and claimed that his bicycle had been stolen over 2 weeks ago. He had not reported the theft to the police, which raised suspicions. Yosef then appeared increasingly anxious, prompting police to leave his hospital room. The police also discovered that he had been near the canal around 6 p.m. that same day. They obtained a warrant to search his apartment, allowing them to collect his clothing and mobile phone for forensic analysis. They called Yosef to inform him of this. Sensing something was amiss, he directly asked the police, through an interpreter, if he was a suspect. The officers reassured him that they were merely trying to clarify the situation and needed to conduct an examination. This conversation occurred over the phone. After the police answered, the Yosef paused for a long moment. Then he turned to the translator and asked him to accurately relay his words to the police officer. Yosef admitted that he had killed the girl by the canal, but he insisted that it was unintentional and an accident. Later, the Yosef addressed the police directly. He explained that he was riding his bicycle along a path when he encountered an unfamiliar girl. He had a knife in his hand and accidentally cut her in the neck after losing his balance. She became angry, which frightened Yosef, and he claimed he struck her in the stomach with an object that resembled a knife. He said he tried to remain calm, hoping the girl would settle down. However, she began screaming and threatening him even more, forcing Yosef to defend himself. He then attacked her, repeatedly stabbing her in the neck with his knife. She fought back desperately, but he was able to overpower her. The police were taken aback by his phone confession, finding the story hard to believe. It seemed implausible that Yosef could accidentally stab the victim in the neck before she attacked him. They questioned how Aisling could have had a knife. Yosef expressed fear of retaliation. He believed that if Aisling's friends and relatives learned of the incident, they might harm his children and wife. He asked the police to keep the names of his family members confidential. The police assured Yosef that he would not face prosecution as he would soon be arrested and put on trial. After being discharged from hospital, he was immediately arrested for murder. Afterward, the Yosef changed his story and refused to confess. Despite this, the prosecutor's office viewed him as the only person who could have harmed Aisling that day. They decided to seek the maximum punishment for the murderer. The initial trial date was set for June 2023, but there were several delays, and it wasn't until October 2023 that the prosecution presented the case to the jury. During the trial, prosecutors played surveillance footage showing an attacker who looked like Yosef cycling along a path near the canal for hours before targeting Aisling. His actions were typical of a predator looking for prey. Forensic experts found traces of DNA under Aisling's fingernails, suggesting she fought back and injured her attacker. DNA from tissue samples matched Yosef, and his fingerprints were found on a green bicycle. All witnesses who saw the attacker that day identified him as Yosef. New evidence emerged during the investigation, particularly from one of Josef's friends, a Slovakian bus driver. On the night of January 12, while working, he encountered Josef, who had severe scratches on his stomach. Concerned, the driver offered Josef a ride home. Josef mentioned he had gotten into a fight but did not provide details about the incident. During the drive, the bus driver repeatedly questioned Josef about what had happened, but Josef avoided giving clear answers and kept holding his stomach, which was bleeding. The driver grew increasingly worried, suspecting that the injuries might be linked to the ethnic cleansing events happening at that time, as there were widespread expressions of hatred against other nationalities. To deflect his friend's questions, Josef concocted a story about being attacked by a masked man, claiming he couldn't identify the attacker because he hadn't seen his face before and didn't know him. Josef attempted to portray himself as a hero, claiming he had seen a masked stranger attacking a woman near the canal. Josef claimed he was stabbed multiple times as he tried to approach the bleeding girl. He became frightened when he realized what had happened and then fled. Despite being suspected of murder, he began to insist that he was actually the savior, having been injured in a fight with the real attacker. However, this new account does not clarify how his DNA was found under Aisling's fingernails or his fingerprints on the green bike he left behind. Josef's defense argued that his false confession about the attack on Aisling resulted from the painkillers he received in the hospital, which caused him to feel euphoric and led him to speak to himself. Josef stated that he was under the influence of these drugs when the police began their interrogation. However, doctors who treated Josef contradicted this claim. They stated that he only received a minimal dose of the medication, meaning it could not have significantly affected him by the time he made his confession. The prosecution highlighted that Josef had changed his testimony multiple times, making his statements unreliable. However, this posed a challenge for the prosecution because Josef had no history of violence, especially against women. There were no indications of aggression or cruelty in his behavior, and he had no connection to Aisling, raising questions about his motive for the attack. The prosecution argued that the incident was not a result of personal issues. The trial lasted 3 weeks, after which a jury of 12 members returned their verdict. They deliberated for 3 hours before finding Josef Puska guilty of the murder of Aisling Murphy. As a result, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The circumstances surrounding Aisling's murder shocked the nation. Just days after the tragedy, protests were held across Ireland in support of the victim's family, and the case shocked the nation. During the investigation, police determined that Josef had attacked Aisling without any apparent motive. He did not know her. He appeared to be a predator who had been searching for a victim for hours. Unfortunately, Aisling fell victim to a monster. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Hunt family. In New South Wales, there is a small rural town called Lockhart, located between Sydney and Melbourne, where the central figures of our story lived. With a population of around 800, it was a quiet and close-knit community. Here, we find the farm belonging to the Hunt family, which had 3 children. The head of the family, Jeff Hunt, was 44 years old, and his wife Kim was 3 years younger. They met during their university years, where they were both active and athletic. They were immediately drawn to each other and became inseparable, eventually marrying and aspiring to build a large, loving family. The people of Lockhart held the Hunts in high regard, appreciating them for their kindness, friendliness, and involvement in the community. Kim Hunt had always dreamed of helping people. After finishing school, she enrolled in university to study medicine. Once she graduated, she began working at a hospital as a nurse in the intensive care unit, where she took pride in saving lives. She felt that her dream had finally come true. In her spare time, she enjoyed horseback riding and worked on their family farm, growing rapeseed alongside her brother Alan, continuing the legacy of their parents. At the time of these events, the family was overcoming a difficult period in their lives. Jeff and Kim supported each other, which helped them recognize each other's positive traits. They had 3 children who adored them: Fletcher, the eldest at 10 years old, Mia, who was 8, and Phoebe, the youngest at 6. The family was well respected in their town, partly due to their active involvement in local volunteer work. However, they faced significant challenges. In 2012, Kim and Phoebe, her youngest daughter, were in a serious car accident when Kim lost control, causing the vehicle to roll over twice. While her daughter Phoebe sustained only minor injuries, Kim's condition was much more severe. Doctors fought to save her life, and she spent a long time in a medically induced coma, ultimately miraculously surviving. After this traumatic event, Kim underwent a lengthy recovery process. Initially, doctors believed she might only be suitable as an organ donor and did not expect her to regain a normal life. However, Jeff, her husband, refused to accept this outcome. He dedicated himself to supporting Kim throughout her rehabilitation, believing they could overcome the odds. With his encouragement, Kim gradually learned to walk, eat, talk, and perform daily tasks again. Nonetheless, it was clear that she would never fully return to her previous self. Jeff took on the responsibilities of caring for his children and wife while also working. Although relatives provided some help, it was insufficient. To ease their burden, Jeff hired a nurse for his wife and a housekeeper, which greatly improved their lives. Doctors acknowledged Jeff's significant role in Kim's recovery, but specialists and family members remarked that the accident had fundamentally changed her life and personality. Kim lost her temper easily and experienced frequent mood swings, often directed at Jeff. Despite this, Jeff was patient, fully understanding how challenging her recovery was. Over time, things began to improve. Kim started to walk and move around more, gradually participating in household chores and making an effort not to be a burden. She was used to being independent and self-sufficient, so she aimed to return to her previous life, but found it all quite difficult. Kim was trying to manage the household and care for 3 children, which was challenging for someone recovering from a severe car accident that caused significant brain and spinal cord injuries. This created immense daily stress, which began to affect all aspects of the household, including her relationship with her husband. Jeff was also feeling the strain. In addition to the household challenges, he was facing serious financial issues. Initially, he found it hard to balance supporting his family with the increasing financial pressure. While his wife took care of the home and children, he was also working on the farm, which made it difficult for him to manage everything, particularly the harvest. They were spending a lot on medications, leaving them struggling to make ends meet. During Kim's rehabilitation, Jeff experienced several nervous breakdowns due to the overwhelming stress. Doctors observed a significant improvement in Kim's mental health. Previously, she had expressed to them that she was struggling and often thought about death. Kim felt that it would be easier for everyone if she were to die in an accident, believing it would spare others from having to support her. To prevent any potential tragedy, all firearms were taken from the Hunt family's farm. However, since they were necessary for self-defense and farming, the firearms were quickly returned but kept hidden from Kim. She had been on extended leave from work, which she missed greatly, as it used to bring her joy. What weighed most heavily on her were the children, whom she loved dearly and spent all her time with. In 2013, she began to recover and returned to work as a nurse. Initially, she couldn't work the same way she had before, as she quickly became tired and frequently forgot things. To aid her rehabilitation, she started with a small workload, working no more than 8 hours a week as a junior staff intern. She also resumed volunteering, focusing on topics that were meaningful to her. She spoke about road safety and traumatic brain injuries, sharing her own experiences to connect with others and offer support. By August 2014, the Hunt family felt they were returning to a normal life. Kim's sister, Jenny, visited her to celebrate Phoebe's daughter's 6th birthday. The celebration felt reminiscent of happier times before the tragedy, bringing Jenny joy. It appeared that things had settled down, and they had overcome their struggles. However, Jenny had no idea this would be her last visit with younger sister. On September 8, 2014, Kim took the children to the school bus stop for their usual day at school. In the afternoon, the housekeeper, Lauren, arrived to help with housework. The children's school day went smoothly, and around 3:30 p.m., Kim and the kids returned home. The previous day had been Father's Day, and Jeff was supposed to spend it with the children while Kim rested. Due to her injuries, she often tired quickly and needed a nap. Overall, the day was pleasant until a minor conflict arose between Jeff and their eldest son, 10-year-old Fletcher, over a football game. Jeff, who typically refereed the children's matches, disagreed with Fletcher's actions during the game, leading to tension. Kim comforted Fletcher after the disagreement. Later, Jeff decided to visit his parents on the farm for the holiday without his family. He explained that Kim, the children, and Lauren stayed behind to finish their chores, which is why they did not accompany him. His parents noticed that their son seemed lost that day. He wasn't smiling as he usually did and wasn't communicating much. It was difficult to get him to talk, which was unusual for him since he was normally positive, sociable, and cheerful. However, this time he seemed sad, and they quickly realized something was wrong. They tried to ask Jeff what had happened, but he avoided answering and eventually went home. According to Lauren's testimony, there was a minor conflict between Jeff and Kim that day. It didn't seem serious, but it had upset Jeff, who then went to play golf, leaving his wife with the children. When he returned, he sent the kids to take a shower. Around 7 p.m., they watched a family show on TV before having a snack and going to bed. Kim, still upset from a previous argument. Her frustration stemmed from the fight and his choices, such as giving the children unhealthy food and letting them watch TV, which were against her rules. She also mentioned that one of her husband's brothers had taken money from their family fund to purchase a house and a car. Additionally, she was upset that her husband was giving large amounts of money to his family from the fund from there. Around 7:30 p.m., the house was quiet after the Lauren left. She said goodbye to the family, with the children hugging her, and Jeff called out, "Goodbye, thank you, see you tomorrow." What transpired in the house afterward remains unclear. Later, the Lauren informed the police that the family atmosphere had been tense throughout the day, but she never imagined the horror that unfolded after she left. The Lauren returned to the farm during the day, as she usually did. As she approached the house, she noticed Kim lying on the lawn. She was still in her pajamas. Concerned that Kim had fallen and needed help, Lauren rushed over. However, as she got closer, she saw that Kim was not moving, and her face was covered by 2 jackets. When Lauren removed the jackets, she realized it was too late to help. Kim was dead from a gunshot wound to the head and was lying in a pool of blood. Her body was already cold, and the horrifying scene terrified Lauren. She immediately called emergency services. When the medics arrived, they confirmed that the 41-year-old Kim Hunt was dead. Kim had been shot at close range, with the bullet entering just above her right eye, leaving her with no chance of survival. The medics entered the house and soon found a shell casing on the floor in the hallway, indicating that the murder had occurred there. When police arrived and searched the house, they found Fletcher, Phoebe, and Mia murdered in their bedrooms, all 3 children shot in the head. A note written on a napkin was found on the kitchen table. The note, written in adult handwriting, read, "I'm sorry, it's all my fault." But it is unclear who wrote it. Although it is believed that Jeff, the husband, wrote the note, but it was not possible to find him. There are two possibilities: the criminals attacked the house, murdered Jeff's family and kidnapped him, or he himself was responsible for the deaths and went into hiding. Ultimately, the case could only be cleared up if Jeff was found. He was therefore declared a wanted man and an active search was launched. There was no evidence of anyone else in the house, no fingerprints or DNA, and no signs of forced entry. News of this tragic event spread quickly throughout the community. People were shocked and frightened, trying to understand what had happened in the Hunt family home that night. Many found it hard to believe that their neighbor, Jeff, could have committed such acts. People were genuinely concerned about his whereabouts and safety, thinking that he could be the next victim of the killers. As a result, the community called for a quick resolution of the case and the arrest of the criminals to restore safety to the area. The police conducted an investigation around the farm for an extended period until they discovered fresh tire tracks the following day. These tracks led them to a small dam located a few hundred meters from the Hunt family home. Divers searching the reservoir, which was about 1.5 meters deep, found the body of Jeff Hunt along with a shotgun. He died of a gunshot wound to the top of the head. And it was apparent that he ended his life by putting the gun in his mouth. An examination showed that his body had been in the water for approximately 30 hours. When experts compared Jeff's handwriting from cards he had previously given to his wife with a note found on the dining table, they confirmed a 100% match. This evidence indicated that he was responsible for the tragic event. It was impossible to completely piece together the events since there were no witnesses. It appears that Jeff coldly murdered his 3 sleeping children and then shot Kim as she tried to flee the house. He likely regretted his actions later and wrote a suicide note, which left him with no way to turn back. Jeff left his family, got into his old car, and drove along a dirt road. After traveling a few hundred meters, he turned into a wheat paddock and headed towards the pond, where the abandoned car. The motive behind the crime was completely unclear. Many local residents held Jeff Hunt in high regard and refused to believe he could be responsible for the violence, despite the clear evidence against him. In the town of Lockhart, he was a respected figure, a farmer, a referee for children's football games, a volunteer, and an active participant in community events. This admiration led to a peculiar reaction among the locals. Some speculated that the weapon may have been in the hands of Kim, who had previously expressed a desire to end her life. Some even called her a witch, claiming that she was responsible for the crimes, accusing her of killing her family due to her mood swings, framing her husband, and then ending her life. This scenario was physically impossible. Jeff was found with a shotgun, while Kim was discovered far from the shell casing where the shots were fired. With the injuries on her body, it was obvious that she couldn't have fired that gun. An examination showed she didn't have the physical ability to shoot a shotgun, as her right side was impaired. Therefore, experts were unanimous that Jeff was the killer. Despite the police conclusively proving that Jeff Hunt had the weapon and was responsible for the deaths of his entire family, some people continue to defend him. Jeff had built such a positive image that many viewed him as a martyr, despite the fact that he had murdered 3 innocent children and his wife, who had already survived a serious car accident. Justifying his actions, regardless of the circumstances, was impossible. The community came together to raise funds and organize a funeral for the victims. Police faced challenges in determining a motive for the crime. Although Jeff was upset that day due to an argument with his son and a conflict with his wife, this was not typical behavior for him. When the Lauren was present, the situation did not escalate. Despite a tense atmosphere in the house, Jeff and Kim generally handled their disputes in a calm and respectful manner, so they maintained their composure. there were no signs indicating the upcoming crisis. The Lauren had never seen Jeff lose his temper, hit his wife and children, or even raise his voice. She never imagined he would resort to violence. As a result, she and others doubted that Jeff could have committed the crime. In contrast, Kim sometimes yelled at her husband and children when she was upset or forgot to take her antidepressants. It was hard to believe that Jeff could have been suffering from deep depression to the point of murdering his family. It would have been difficult to hide such a serious condition from their relatives and the Lauren, who saw them every day. Yet, even she saw no signs that anything tragic was about to happen. Jeff did experience some financial difficulties, but they were manageable and did not stop him from supporting his family or seeking solutions. He was not the type to back down when faced with challenges, especially after carrying the weight of responsibility for many years. Police, gathering evidence over time, determined that the crime was not planned but was instead a spontaneous reaction. This was unusual for Jeff. He had plans for the next day and the upcoming week. Before the Lauren departed, he behaved like a responsible family man and caring father, preparing meals for the children for school and arranging a tennis match with a friend for the weekend. It was revealed that Jeff had been seeing a psychotherapist and had shared that he feared being left alone with the children if Kim were to leave him. Just weeks before her death, Kim told a relative that she was unhappy with Jeff's management of their finances, which often led to money issues. She also admitted that she no longer loved him and felt no attraction, even considering divorce. The tension in their relationship might have intensified, as Kim wanted a divorce and had expressed her desire to separate to Jeff, which could have led to a violent response. The investigation into the incident involved several psychology and psychiatry specialists who provided important insights. One expert, after reviewing the case and speaking with the deceased's relatives, noted that Jeff showed signs of depression, including feelings of sadness and anxiety. Shortly before the shooting, he visited his family looking distressed and remained quiet, suggesting he was hiding something. His family noticed his unusual behavior and tried to understand what was bothering him. In situations like this, it can be challenging to identify the issues, especially since men often avoid discussing their feelings and see asking for help as a sign of weakness. They typically keep their struggles to themselves, which can build up and eventually lead to an emotional outburst, sometimes with tragic consequences. Jeff may have battled his problems for many years while trying to maintain a normal life, hiding his struggles and worsening his situation. Psychologists suggest that he likely wanted to escape due to depression and a deep sense of hopelessness. His use of a firearm to inflict a single fatal injury indicates that he probably did not intend to harm his wife and children. The Lauren reported that Jeff appeared to be under immense pressure from various aspects of his life, including the challenges of caring for his sick wife, Kim, and her changed personality, which may have pushed him to a breaking point. Kim's family also felt that her condition had made life so difficult. Experts believe that Jeff never intended to harm his family. Instead, he was likely overwhelmed by his personal issues and worries, and the stress from the impending divorce may have contributed to his state of mind. However, in a sudden change of thought, he chose to end the lives of everyone around him. He might have convinced himself that as the family's main provider, he was saving them from a future of poverty. In a tragic effort to prevent what he saw as a disastrous outcome, Jeff committed the unimaginable act of killing his family quickly and painlessly, aiming to spare them from suffering. The tragic case of the Hunt family marked one of the bloodiest Father's Days in Australian crime history. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Martin Durham. Martin Durham was born in 1969 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He was an ordinary child and lived in good conditions, all around is natural beauty. In addition, he loved fishing and hiking, capturing photos along the way. He usually took a tent and a hiking backpack to enjoy a few days in the fresh air, he often accompanied by an older cousin. At 17, Martin met his first love, Glenna Johnson, who was a year older. They live in the same area and attended the same school. Their romance was brief, leading to a quick breakup, but they got back together and broke up many times. They shared many interests and could not stay apart for long. Despite their similarities, but they ultimately decided to end the relationship and go their separate ways. For a long time, they neither saw nor communicated with each other. During this period, Martin met another woman, Christine Keller, and he quickly fell in love with her. The two of them get along very well, and then they soon moved in together. After a short time of dating, he realized that she would be an ideal life partner, and they should build a stronger relationship. In the following years, Christine and Martin married and moved into a house given to them by their parents, located in a quiet residential area of the city. Over the next few years, they had 2 sons and a daughter. Christine focused on managing the home and caring for the children, while Martin worked to support the family. In addition to his main job repairing cars, he also worked at a restaurant in the city of Vlam. Despite this, the early years of their marriage were challenging, especially because their children were born close in age. So, they had many difficulties in taking care of their young children. They slept little and were often exhausted, leading to frequent arguments. However, they were determined to overcome these difficulties. Martin was a devoted father and made every effort to support his family. Many people saw him as a role model. In March 1995, Martin's family faced a tragedy when a truck ran a red light and collided with his car. The truck dragged his car along the road, crushing both Martin and the driver. Martin suffered severe injuries, including broken ribs, a broken jaw, broken legs, and a traumatic brain injury that severely damaged a large part of his brain. Doctors tried their best to save him, but he was in a coma for months. Then, he underwent multiple surgeries and slowly began to recover. However, Martin's difficulties were not over. It took a long time for him to return to his normal life. He had to relearn basic movements, like sitting up and holding his head, before progressing to more complex ones. The accident left his face disfigured, and he lost some brain functions. Despite the difficulties, he tried to overcome them and return to a normal life with his family. He spent a long time moving around in a wheelchair before transitioning to crutches. Although he gradually overcame the physical effects of the accident, he remained psychologically affected. Martin could no longer work as an auto mechanic to support his family, and he encountered many physical limitations that turned his life upside down. The hardest thing for him was not being able to maintain the active lifestyle he had before. He loved camping, fishing, and traveling, but now he was bedridden and just hang around the house. Every movement caused him severe pain, which only the strongest painkillers could help manage. According to doctors, these effects would persist throughout his life. This challenging time affected not only Martin, who survived the accident, but also his family. His wife, Christine, previously managed only the children and household chores, but now she had to handle the family's finances. She was compelled to enroll the children in daycare and find a job to support them, in addition to caring for her sick husband. Fortunately, her close relatives pitched in to help. With their support, Christine was able to manage all the difficulties. However, Martin also became aggressive and hostile towards his wife. In addition, he also lost his memory. He cannot remember much about his past, including family events, and sometimes forgot his children's names. Longtime friends and acquaintances became strangers to him. He was isolated because he did not communicate well with people due to severe memory loss, difficulty concentrating, and confusion. This makes him cold and looked down upon. Martin often retreated into his own thoughts, which he kept to himself. Meanwhile, he was recovering from injuries and regularly attended physiotherapy, sometimes staying in the hospital for treatment. He switched doctors several times, but fortunately, his physical condition gradually improved. However, he was still tormented by the psychological aftermath of his trauma. At the same time, Martin constantly controls the family's spending and criticized his wife's financial management. This made their relationship more and more strained. This was a very difficult time for the young family. Martin went through a difficult process of dealing with trauma and psychological problems, but was unable to overcome them. Some issues made him angry, and he often lost his temper with his wife without justification. Christine did her best to accept the changes in her husband's behavior, but eventually, she felt she couldn't take it anymore. Years after the accident, Christine filed for divorce. Later, she admitted that she didn't want to do it, but she couldn't stand Martin any longer. The divorce was a major blow to Martin. He felt resentment and disappointment for a long time. Some time passed, he was able to regain his spirits. He received a large insurance payout for the accident, which he used to buy real estate and purchase another house. In addition, Martin was also paid a monthly sum by his insurance company as compensation for the accident during his recovery. Thanks to this, he was able to continue his life and take care of himself without financial hardship. After that, Martin moved to his new house with the parrot that Christine loved so much. She had left the bird with he to keep him company and prevent loneliness. The bird, a 15-year-old African gray parrot named Bat, was quite old. This new house is located in Sand Lake, not far from his previous house. He had big plans to recover as soon as possible, so he could return to normal life for the sake of his children. Martin quickly settled into his new place. He kept in regular contact with his children, and even his relationship with his ex-wife Christine improved. She noticed that he finally had an interest in life and enjoyed spending time in the backyard. He discovered his talent for design on his own, and this was soon recognized by others. Neighbors frequently sought his help for designing private gardens and lawn care. This job has helped him earn more income and gain confidence in dealing with life's difficulties and helping him improve his health. Doctors have observed a steady improvement in his condition and has a positive direction. Although Martin's health and mood have improved significantly, but Christine still hesitated to return to him. She is afraid that old problems may return. She kept her distance, maintained contact, and brought the children to visit. By chance, Martin reconnected with his first love, Glenna Johnson, who had also recently divorced. They rekindled old feelings and began a romantic relationship. Glenna eventually moved in with Martin. Glenna's children remained with her ex-husband, but she still visits them regularly. Martin's children also visited from time to time. Glenna and Martin enjoy activities such as fishing, hunting, and hiking. She assisted with his physical limitations during these times. However, it was challenging, so they often opted for walks in the area or visits to the casino, which they loved in their youth. These casino visits have become a monthly routine for them, where they tested their luck. They became well known in the local community, often invite friends and acquaintances over to play poker, backyard barbecues, and generally forming a harmonious partnership. It seems they have found each other again and are happy together. In the summer of 2005, Glenna and Martin decided to get married. Everything appeared fine, but their closest friends knew there were underlying issues in the seemingly perfect relationship. After the accident, Martin changed, he becoming more short-tempered and demanding. He tried to control Glenna and disliked when she did things without him or left him alone for errands. He tries to manage all their finances, which caused problems. She tried to manage family problems by himself, but he was suspicious that she was not entirely honest, spending excessively on unnecessary items. During this time, he continued to receive disability benefits, and his wife took on guardianship, but she had one weakness. Glenna was a gambler and spent a lot of money on it. She visited the casino much more often than her husband, without him knowing, and she losing a lot of money. Additionally, there were issues between Glenna and his ex-wife, Christine. Apparently, Martin frequently complained about Christine, accusing her of leaving him during a tough time after the accident, but he didn't talk about how he made Christine's life unbearable. Christine tolerated him for 2 years before leaving, but she continued to support him as much as she could. Christine kept in touch with Martin's and brought the children to visit he. However, he spoke negatively about Christine to his new wife, Glenna. Plus, Glenna also expressed that she absolutely does not like the children of Martin and Christine. This made Christine and her children feel uncomfortable, to the point where they didn't want to visit Martin when Glenna was there. They disliked hearing unpleasant things about their mother, Christine, and she supported their decision by not bringing them to their father. Martin became angry with his ex-wife and constantly quarreled with her. This led to tension with the children and Glenna. Overall, the relationships deteriorated, and everyone's behavior only worsened the situation. A clear testament to Glenna's deep love for Martin is the tattoo of his name on the back of her hand, which she got 18 years ago when they were dating. She never removed it, likely because she had strong emotions for him all these years. She has still loved him for the past 15 years and waited for the moment they would be together again. However, within the family, the relationship was far from romantic, with frequent disputes over money. Martin suspected Glenna was overspending and debt piled up. She often took money from him without his knowledge. Over time, she took complete control of the family's finances, further straining their relationship. Glenna began using the check from the insurance company that Martin received every month as an allowance. In addition, she also illegally traded in some strong drugs. At the time of the accident, Martin did not take these medications regularly, resulting in a large amount of medication being left unused. Glenna sold these medications secretly. However, his involvement in this activity remains unclear. Some believe he was complicit in the sale, help him earn extra income while he is recovering from a traffic accident and is struggling financially. But there are also those who oppose this theory, who believe that Glenna sold the remaining amount of medicine without telling him. Even though Glenna and Martin's relationship was having problems, they persisted in a toxic relationship for over 11 years. By 2015, they still acted friendly and were always seen together, but they no longer concealed their failing marriage. Occasionally, the discontent between them led to increasingly frequent scandals. One of Glenna's friends later claimed to have witnessed their breakup, during which Glenna threatened to kill Martin. Despite this, they mostly maintained the appearance of an ideal couple, walking hand in hand as they did at the start of their relationship in their youth. By May 2015, the issue of divorce had become serious. One morning that May, Christine, Martin's ex-wife, discovered that Martin was selling his house. She found an advertisement on an auction site and was very surprised. She immediately called Martin to ask why he suddenly wanted to sell a house he loved so much, where he devoted his love to creating his garden. However, he was unaware of this sale, so he asked his current wife, Glenna, about it. Glenna claimed it was a mistake and said she would resolve it, but the fact is she didn't solve it. Previously, their car had been repossessed due to debts, and Glenna had similarly assured Martin it was a mistake and she would fix it, but nothing changed. The auction for the house was scheduled for 3 weeks later, by the end of the month. Perhaps due to the debt accumulated during their marriage, and Glenna wanted to sell the house to pay off the debt, but she did not want to tell Martin about this. On May 13, 2015, one of Martin's neighbors visited him early in the morning to discuss some routine matters. The neighbor was surprised when no one responded to his knock. as Martin usually kept his door open at that time. Concerned, the neighbor entered the house and called out to Martin and Glenna, but no one replied. Venturing further inside, he discovered the reason for the silence. In their bedroom, he found Martin lying on the floor in a pool of blood, and next to it is Glenna, who was bleeding heavily from the head. Terrified that the perpetrator might still be around, the neighbor fled from the scene and immediately called 911. When the ambulance arrived, they realized that Martin was lifeless. Martin was lying on his side, wearing only his underwear, his body already cold, and the doctors confirmed that the 46-year-old had died several hours earlier. However, Glenna was still alive and even conscious. She tried to say something. She managed to utter a fragmented sentence that was not understood. Glenna was found lying next to Martin, fully clothed. However, she could not provide any useful information about the incident. She was rushed to the hospital for medical treatment. A bullet had grazed her skull without damaging the brain, so her injuries were not severe. She recovered quickly after surgery at the clinic. Detectives were able to question her soon after, but she was still undergoing treatment, and they had other cases to handle. The investigators tried to piece together the sequence of incident by examining the crime scene thoroughly. It did not appear to be a robbery because valuables or personal items in the house are not lost. Even the money, left in a visible spot, was untouched. Additionally, there were no signs of forced entry, suggesting Glenna and Martin might have known the attacker and let him in. During this time, police discovered that Martin was taking strong painkillers and Glenna involved in selling them. There was then an assumption that it was that trade that may have triggered the attack. The entire scheme of selling medicines was uncovered, and detectives believe there may have been a conflict with the buyer during the transfer process. However, by that time, forensic experts had already examined and analyzed the crime scene, including the bullets and weapons found in the house. The pistol was later tested and confirmed to be the murder weapon. In fact, this pistol has belonged to Martin for many years, but both of them were shot with it. First, the attacker must enter the house, know exactly where the weapon is and retrieve it. Then he finds the magazine, loads the gun and then starts shooting. This plan seemed too complicated and therefore unlikely. Moreover, during a more thorough search of the bathroom, Martin's painkillers was found and had not been stolen, which ruled out the possibility of selling them and ruled out the motive for the crime being an attack by the buyer. The weapon used to kill Martin was found under the sofa in the living room. There is a lot of blood there, which did not match the location where the body was found. Apparently an attack also took place in the living room, a shooting, and then the shooting continued in the bedroom. Martin might have been shot in the living room, and then the body moved, but why was this done? It seemed this was done intentionally, perhaps to stage the crime and mislead the investigation. This assumption was confirmed when a spent cartridge case was found in the living room, indicating that the shooting occurred there. As the investigation progressed, more questions surfaced. Blood samples from different rooms were analyzed, revealing unexpected results. The analysis showed that all shots fired at Martin happened in the bedroom. His blood was not present in the living room, and there were no signs of his body being moved. The blood found in the living room belonged solely to Glenna, who was discovered in the bedroom. The bullet casing found in the living room corresponded to the shot that hit her head, supporting this theory. But how did she manage to reach the bedroom after this injury? Medical experts informed the police that this scenario was possible because Glenna's injury was less severe than initially thought. She could have reached the bedroom by herself, especially since she was conscious when found. Nonetheless, the situation appeared unusual. From then on, the police began to suspect that Glenna fired at her husband and then injured herself to divert suspicion. However, these theories still needed solid evidence. At this time, the police were unable to interview Glenna, as she was still in the hospital undergoing treatment and recovery. They took her mobile phone for investigation. Through this, detectives discovered that their family was experiencing a severe financial crisis. Just the day before Martin's death, she searched online for how to use the Uger 6 pistol, the same gun involved in Martin's death and her own head wound. Police found 2 farewell letters, in which Glenna apologized to her children for what she was about to do. She also said goodbye to everyone, indicating her plan to end her life. The Supreme Court identified Glenna's as the perpetrator of the crime. Based on all the collected evidence, the investigation was reopened, but something compelled her to shoot her husband first. Martin was killed in the bedroom, and Glenna shot herself in the head in the living room. However, unlike Martin, she did not die instantly and managed to reach the marital bedroom. This can be clarified by talking to her, so the police waited until they could interview her. They continued gathering evidence in the meantime. Martin's family was already convinced that they were not attacked by a stranger. The shooter was his wife, Glenna. Christine Keller, the ex-wife of Martin, was shocked by the events. Although she never thought highly of Glenna, especially because of Glenna's aggressive behavior, but she did not expect this to happen. Then, Christine took her old parrot home to the children. Meanwhile, detectives were finally able to speak with Glenna, who was feeling well. Doctors confirmed that she understood what was happening around her and ready to talk to the detectives. Despite the doctor's positive assessment, but she told the investigators that, in her view, she never wrote farewell letters and did not plan to end her life, let alone kill her husband. Police officers were concerned because Glenna completely denied being involved in the attack on her husband, yet she also claimed she couldn't remember what happened on that tragic day. This inconsistency seemed suspicious and hinted that she might be a suspect, but at that time, they had no solid evidence against her. Glenna was released from the hospital several months later. Meanwhile, the investigation had not uncovered any new evidence. Police were concerned that Glenna's denials and the trauma she had suffered might convince a jury that she was innocent. One day, Christine was awakened by the parrot's voice and went to see it. She was amazed by what it was saying. She decided to use her phone to record the monologue. The parrot kept repeating, "It says, beg Glenna, don't shoot him." This caused Christine's great shock and fear. For a while afterwards, she was even haunted by nightmares. She immediately informed the police and later showed them the video recording. Although the use of a parrot as a witness in court was unprecedented, from that moment on, all of the detectives' suspicions about Glenna's involvement in the case were confirmed. New details of the case have attracted widespread public and media attention. Meanwhile, the investigation continued. The incident was again in the news at the end of June 2016 when police arrested Glenna. They had been collecting evidence to piece together a full case that would clearly show the jury who the killer was and help the Martin family get justice. It was initially thought that the footage of the parrot accusing Glenna would not be used, as it might seem too provocative, and it was uncertain how the jury would react to it. The prosecutor argued that Glenna was in severe financial trouble and could not admit her gambling failures to her spouse. For a long time before the murder, she neglected to pay bills because all her money went to cover debts from her gambling addiction. Eventually, she decided to end her life, writing 2 letters, one to her husband and one to the children. This suggested that Glenna did not initially plan to harm her husband, but something went awry. The final straw was the failed sale of the family home, which was put up for auction without her husband's knowledge. When Martin found out about this from Christine, he likely confronted Glenna. A fierce argument may have ensued, leading her to kill him in a fit of rage before deciding to end her life. Glenna and her lawyer claimed that she had no memory of the shooting or the letter and insisted that she loved her husband too much, so she can't hurt him. They presented a list of medications she was taking to improve cognitive function as evidence of her mental condition. She also denied searching online for how to use a gun, stating that she only used her phone for games and calls. The trial lasted 10 days. The prosecution believed it had a strong case to persuade the jury. However, the jury seemed uncertain, due to the largely circumstantial evidence. Then, a video of the parrot's words was introduced as a crucial piece of evidence. Experts say the parrots form a close relationship with their owner, Martin, and they learn to imitate Martin's voice. Most experts agree that those words left a strong and deep impression on the parrot's memory, so it repeated them over and over again. In the end, this evidence was effective. After 8 hours of deliberation, the jury found 49-year-old Glenna guilty. In this case, the parrot played an important role as a witness, contributing to finding justice. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Ellie Nessler. In the small town of Jamestown, California, Daniel Mark Driver was on trial for child abuse. One of Daniel's victims was William Nelayer, a defenseless child. William's mother, Ellie, felt that the justice system had failed to protect her son, so Ellie took matters into her own hands with a gun. The case sparked widespread debate, with some people fully supporting Ellie, while others criticized her actions. Ultimately, the discussion surrounding the case attracted national attention. Jamestown was a small, quiet town with a population of about 3,500 at the time of the incident. Ellie was the eldest of 3 daughters. Her parents were hardworking miners who taught Ellie the importance of self-reliance from a young age. As a result, she grew up to be strong and independent. During her teenage years, Ellie began to help her family by looking for work. It was a tough economic time. She took on various jobs to supplement her income. She also helped her parents by taking care of her younger siblings. When Ellie turned 20, she fell in love with a guy she met, and they quickly entered a romantic relationship. Soon after, they got married, but their marriage ended in divorce shortly thereafter. Her next partner was Bill, who worked as a miner. Additionally, Bill operated construction equipment, allowing him to earn a good income. They married in 1982 and soon welcomed a son named William. Bill grew up in an area that was once the center of the gold rush. As a child, he had listened to stories of old men panning for gold in the river, which inspired him to seek their adventure, even though the land was largely depleted by then. In search of better fortune, Bill and his family traveled to Liberia, West Africa, during the gold rush. While Bill was prospecting for gold, Ellie gave birth to their daughter, Rebecca. Unfortunately, Rebecca's early years were not peaceful. Suddenly, shortly after her birth, civil war broke out in Liberia. As a result, Ellie and the children returned to Jamestown, while Bill remained in West Africa, determined to make his fortune mining gold. During this time, Ellie faced numerous challenges in the United States. She received no support from Bill, and although she was a strong and independent woman, managing a household and caring for 2 young children proved to be very difficult for her. They relied on government assistance and occasional jobs that Ellie managed to find. During this period, she received support from her family and the church, which she attended regularly with her children and sister. Her mother often advised her to be self-reliant but also to carry a gun in her handbag for protection. Ellie took this lesson to heart. Despite her delicate appearance, she was always prepared to defend herself and, if needed, to take the initiative in a confrontation. This aspect of her character would later lead to tragic consequences. Ellie is very close to her children and does not let them go far. This protectiveness stems from her own traumatic experience as a child, when she was molested by an adult man. After she confided in her mother, her mother reacted violently and threatened him to leave town. This incident left Ellie with lasting psychological scars that she has struggled with throughout her life. She fears that her children may face similar dangers. When her son William went to summer camp away from home, she felt very anxious and scared. Despite her worries, William kept asking his mother to let him go to the summer camp organized by the church. Ellie was very anxious about letting her son spend time with others without her supervision. She hadn't even allowed him to sleep over at friends' houses. Eventually, her sister Jenna reassured her, explaining that she knew the camp organizers well and described them as respectable and good people. After thinking it over, Ellie finally agreed to let her son go, hoping he would enjoy himself. William spent 3 weeks at a church-run tent camp. After returning from the summer camp, Ellie noticed a change in William's behavior. William became aggressive, often sad, and stopped communicating. Ellie sensed that something was bothering him. Despite her and her family's efforts to find out what was happening at the camp, William refused to discuss it with adults. He insisted on being treated like an adult and wanted them to stop asking him questions. Younger sister Rebecca and his mother thought he was trying to imitate the older teenagers he had met at the camp. When the new school year started a few weeks later, everyone thought William was settling in well with his friends. However, when he returned to class, things did not improve. He began to withdraw from his family and became more aggressive with his classmates, rarely interacting with others. His anger often became uncontrollable, and these incidents had increased since he had been at the camp. Ellie was confused by William's changes, and it took her over a year to discover the reason behind them. Unfortunately, the truth behind it was quite heartbreaking. Daniel Mark Driver, a 30-year-old man who attended the same church as Ellie and her children, had recently moved in with his mother, who lived nearby. He was considered a good man and an active member of the church, known for his community involvement and willingness to help other parishioners. He always carried a Bible with him and could easily recite passages from it. Daniel took on the role of kitchen staff at the summer camp and also helped supervise the children, who always spoke positively of him. He is a natural psychologist. According to his parents, Daniel can help solve any difficult situation. Students often come to him to confide in him when they are in trouble. Many boys who do not have fathers consider Daniel as a father figure. With his persuasive skills, he can talk to any teenager. William experienced a significant change in his relationship with Daniel. William used to enjoy spending time with Daniel and interacting with him. But after returning from summer camp, William became noticeably anxious even during casual encounters. During this time, William often argued with his sister Rebecca, seemingly starting conflicts for no reason, and William also began to defy his mother. He had never argued with Ellie before, but now he became increasingly defiant. Occasionally, William's Aunt Jen, who was very close to the family, would take William to her home for the weekend. This gave his mother a break. About 9 months after the camp, Jen took William to her home for a weekend. During his stay, he had the opportunity to spend time with his cousins. Each time, Jen tried to discuss the major changes in his behavior, but William was quiet and avoided answering her questions. However, he later confided in her a secret, insisting that she not tell anyone, not even his mother. Jen agreed to keep it a secret. 7-year-old William shared his experience while he was at summer camp. Daniel began to behave inappropriately towards him. One day, the Daniel lured William into the woods with the promise of showing him frogs and other animals. However, as they went deeper into the woods, the Daniel began to abuse him. This abuse continued regularly, even after the summer camp ended. The boy was afraid to go to church and tried to avoid the Daniel as much as possible. The abuse began when William was 6 years old, and during this time, the Daniel threatened him, saying that he would harm William and his family if he revealed what was happening. Fearing danger to his loved ones, William kept quiet and the abuse continued for many months. After hearing the story, Jen felt she had to talk to Ellie. She apologized to William for revealing his secret, but felt the need to take action against the rapist and put an end to his actions. Jen first spoke to her sister Ellie about what had happened to William. Ellie was shocked and blamed herself for exposing her child to such a problem. From the beginning, her maternal instincts warned her that William should not attend the camp. However, she succumbed to the pressure, leading to the outcome she feared and experienced. William worried that the man might come back and act on his threat if he found out that William had told anyone about the incident. The boy became increasingly anxious and fearful. He often came home from school in tears, telling his mother that he had seen Daniel's car in the distance. The panic attacks became more frequent, and he began to feel paranoid. He tried his best to cope, but the situation was still not good. Ellie then reported the molestation involving their son to the police. Police checked Daniel's record in a national database, discovering a worrying history of crimes involving children. In 1984, he was charged with indecent exposure to 5 boys in the San Jose area. Although he was arrested, his church community sent letters of support to him before the trial. With no solid evidence other than the boys' testimony, the judge ultimately decided to give Daniel probation instead of a prison sentence, allowing him to escape the consequences of his actions. This leniency allowed him to continue his harmful actions. Daniel then decided to move away and start over. He moved closer to his mother, where no one knew about his past crimes. Daniel also started attending church and developed a healthy relationship with a woman who had a young son. He became more involved with the children, working with them, giving them advice, and eventually got a job at a church summer camp, where he was often around children. However, the woman began to notice Daniel's unusual behavior towards her child and started to pay closer attention. She eventually asked her son if Daniel had ever bothered him, but the boy appeared confused and insisted that nothing inappropriate had happened. The mother, doubting her son's honesty and fearing he was too scared to speak up, did not dismiss her concerns. She continued to monitor Daniel's behavior. A few months later, she caught Daniel molesting her son. She then contacted a friend who was the district attorney. A background check revealed that Daniel had served 5 months in 1983 for child abuse. Concerns about him grew when William's case occurred, prompting the boy's mother, Ellie, to contact the police. At that point, the police investigated Daniel more closely and gathered evidence from new victims of his molestation. After Ellie reported the incident, the police stepped up their efforts to prevent similar crimes by Daniel. Police began questioning all the families who had come into contact with Daniel, including children who had attended the camp. Many of them reported similar experiences, which helped police understand the tactics Daniel used. He repeatedly targeted boys, gaining their trust while threatening to kill them and their families if they spoke out, which proved effective. Police identified 5 new victims in the area, including William. In 1983, charges were filed, but they were unable to arrest Daniel because he had been out of town for an extended period of time. At the time, it was difficult to track his whereabouts due to the lack of cell phones, GPS, and other tracking technology. Police suspected that he had learned of the investigation and had gone into hiding. Both Daniel and his car were placed on the wanted list, and his photo was widely circulated in the press. However, despite these efforts, it took several years to find him. Meanwhile, William's depression and aggressive behavior continued. He frequently got into fights at school, did poorly in school, and became a bully. As a result, William was expelled from several schools and transferred several times. Ellie believes her son's behavior stems from past violence that has deeply affected him. She sought help for her son, taking him to numerous doctors and psychologists in hopes of improving his situation, but nothing seemed to work. In 1993, police finally caught up with Daniel at a store in Palo Alto, California, for shoplifting. After confessing to the theft, Daniel faced charges not only for shoplifting but also for child abuse. Even after Daniel was arrested and awaiting trial, William continued to feel afraid. He struggled to accept that he would have to face his abuser in court. William would have to testify against him, but the thought of it filled him with dread. William was so anxious that the mere mention of the trial made him feel sick. In desperation, Ellie approached the prosecutor to request special arrangements for her son's testimony. She hoped William could testify without Daniel present to spare him serious emotional distress. Unfortunately, the current rules required William to appear before a jury. To address this situation, the only solution was to install cameras so that William could provide testimony from another room. He would be recorded, and the video would be shown in court. Unfortunately, the small community lacked the funds to set this up. As a result, William had to appear in court like the other boys who had also been victimized by the Daniel. The trial was challenging due to the presence of many emotionally and physically traumatized children. The boys who had already testified had experienced significant distress, but they managed to get through it. On April 2, 1993, 11-year-old William was one of the last witnesses to take the stand. Ellie tried to prepare him for his meeting with Daniel the criminal as best she could. However, when the car carrying William and his relatives arrived at the courthouse, William did not want to leave. He began to have a panic attack and vomited violently. Ellie reassured him that he needed to testify because testifying was the only way to ensure that a dangerous person would be locked up and unable to harm anyone else. William understood the importance of his testimony, but his fear made it difficult for him to calm down. Ellie, William, and the aunts waited outside the courthouse to be called to testify. During this time, they tried to comfort William and help him calm down. Suddenly, a van arrived at the courthouse and Daniel was taken out. When William saw Daniel, he felt nauseous again. Ellie stared at Daniel as he walked through the courthouse yard. She later remembered that Daniel just smirked and walked past. She felt a burning hatred for this man. As they left the building, Daniel's ex-girlfriend and her son, who was also a victim, testified against him. The woman told Ellie that things were not going well. She noted that the children were nervous and confused in their testimony. Daniel took advantage of this by highlighting inconsistencies in their testimony. He continued to put the children in difficult situations, asking distressing questions that only made them more confused. They became increasingly upset, some of them crying. This makes Ellie worried about William. Ellie fears that the situation could affect the trial, potentially allowing a dangerous criminal to escape justice and return to his former criminal ways. At that moment, Ellie Nessler suddenly realizes that she must serve justice, and Daniel must be stopped forever. Court in this county lack modern security features like metal detectors. It is easy to carry guns inside. And many people in the community, including Jen, carry weapons for self-defense. While on the street, Ellie reached into her purse and quietly pulled out a gun. She hid the weapon as they entered the courtroom, where Ellie shot Daniel 6 times. 5 of the bullets hit him in the back of the head and neck, killing him instantly. People in the courtroom panicked and fled, and police rushed in with loaded guns. Jen stepped in front of her sister, causing Ellie to throw the gun to the ground and raise her hands in surrender. She was then arrested. The shocking story of a mother staging a lynching during a court hearing quickly made national headlines. Within a week, every major media outlet had covered the incident, sparking widespread debate about the lynching. Many saw Ellie as a hero, receiving overwhelming support from local residents, especially those affected by the event. 2 local banks even set up defense funds that the community could contribute to for Ellie, leading to a rush of donations from her supporters. Items such as T-shirts that read "Good shot, Ellie" became popular and which sold well. Similar stickers could be found on cars all over the country. Despite this, Ellie couldn't be celebrated as a national hero for her actions. She was arrested and had a bail set at $500,000. This amount was provided by a guarantor from Salmon, allowing her to return home before the hearings and await trial in her own community. However, not everyone agreed with her decision, and she faced criticism from some members of society who accused her of taking the law into her own hands. Still, the majority, including the local community, viewed her as a protector of her child. Police uncovered additional details about Ellie's situation. They found that she had been under the influence of illegal drugs when she fired her weapon in the courthouse. Ellie claimed she used these substances to give herself the courage needed to endure the stressful courtroom hearings. In October 1993, she received a diagnosis of breast cancer, with doctors estimating she only had 5 years to live. Initially found guilty of manslaughter, Ellie was sentenced to 10 years in prison. However, her conviction was later overturned due to the jury's misconduct. She then reached a plea deal with the prosecution, admitting guilt to manslaughter, and ultimately served 3 years in prison before her release. William then moved in with his Aunt Jen. After 2 years, he was finally able to communicate with Ellie, who was still serving her sentence in prison. Ellie expressed her feelings. She deeply regretted having to take someone's life, which was never her intention. However, she felt that the justice system would not be able to protect her son and other children from a dangerous criminal. The only reason she pulled the trigger was the fear that Daniel would be released again. William's life was ruined at a key moment in his growing up. He was molested and then dragged through the courts. William became a hooligan, got involved with bad company, and lost his way. As a result, he had frequent encounters with the law, with courts and prison becoming a regular part of his life. He was first charged with a crime at the age of 14. He was incarcerated 18 times between 1999 and 2004 for various crimes. His criminal record was extensive, including charges of robbery, assault, illegal possession of a weapon, and drug-related offenses. In 2004, when he turned 23, William was living freely, had several tattoos, and resided in his family's house. He didn't have a permanent job, so, similar to his mother in her younger days, he was searching for temporary work for short periods. However, while Ellie had to do this out of necessity due to the economic crisis, for William, it was a result of his involvement in criminal activities. In 2004, he also took a part-time job with his friend David, helping to clean his house during construction and repairs. David had become disabled from working in the oil fields. In June, a dispute arose when tools went missing from the construction site, with both sides blaming each other. When the police arrived, William attacked David and beat him. Due to this incident, along with the previous charges, he was sentenced to 60 days in prison but was released after only 30 days. On July 26, 2004, just an hour after his release, he returned to his workplace. David attempted to escape but was unable to due to his disability. William then attacked David, kicking him in the head several times. As a result, David lost consciousness and died in hospital the following day. William fled the scene but was arrested a few days later and charged with first-degree murder. In June 2005, William Nessler was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Rebecca was the only one to escape the tragic fate and now lives a normal life with her family and children, often reflecting on the absence of her mother and brother during important moments. She deeply misses her brother William, who always looked out for her. Rebecca believes that William would not have ended up in prison if their mother had not shot Daniel. This tragic event caused a series of unfortunate events that made their lives worse. Despite this, she does not resent her mother. She understands that her mother was confused and made a hasty decision. In the end, Rebecca feels that her mother's actions prevented many boys from facing the same fate. Ellie's life ended in tragedy. In addition to battling breast cancer, she faced legal troubles. She became involved in distributing illegal drugs. In 2002, she bought materials for making drugs from a police informant. Initially, Ellie provided some drugs to the informant, but 5 days later, when she returned to collect the pills, she was arrested after the informant reported her. Ellie confessed to her crimes and was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but she only served 4 years. She was released in 2006, but sadly, Ellie Nessler passed away from breast cancer on December 26, 2008, at the age of 56. When Ellie died, William asked to be released from prison to say goodbye to his mother. But his request was denied. 2 years later, in 2010, Rebecca and a reporter visited her brother in prison. They spoke for about 2.5 hours. During the conversation, William was very reflective, reviewing everything that had happened in his life. He did not try to justify his actions or blame anyone else. He noted that he felt he had been pushed down a path of self-destruction at the age of 6, a burden he would always carry. William emphasized how public opinion affected him, especially when the case of Daniel, a rapist who was murdered in court, was heavily covered by the media. The attention affected him. The whole community knew that William was also a victim, sexually abused at the age of 6. People discussed his past, which made him feel ashamed. He doesn't want this attention, but it's hard for him to escape it. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Teresa Parker. Teresa Parker was born on September 9, 1965, to Claire and William. The family initially lived in San Diego, California. They later moved to a home in Lafayette, Georgia, where they settled permanently. Teresa had 5 siblings. She was the middle child. Her friendly and kind nature made her popular with all her relatives. In 1984, Teresa graduated from high school. Soon after, she married her first love. After a while, the couple separated in the early 90s. Teresa completed her training and became a switchboard operator for the city police department, quickly becoming a favorite of the police officers. One of those who loved her was Sam Park, born in 1956 in Lafayette. He had an older sister named Caroline and a younger brother named Kenneth. Sam had a close relationship with his father. Overall, he was a kind and intelligent person. In his spare time, he enjoyed exploring the outskirts of the city, hunting and fishing in the many freshwater bodies nearby. When Sam turned 18, he joined the military and later became a police officer. In the early 1980s, his younger brother Kenneth admired him and chose a similar career, serving in the Marine Corps before joining the police department. Inspired by Sam, Kenneth decided to go to law school. For Sam, becoming a police officer was a lifelong dream. During his career, he once saved a child from a burning building. When Teresa, a beautiful 20-year-old new switchboard operator, joined the police department, she caught the attention of many of the officers, including Sam. They quickly became friends, and before long, Sam asked her out. Their relationship blossomed and they became a couple. However, some of Teresa's relatives noticed that Sam sometimes had difficulty controlling his jokes and could easily get angry. Both Teresa and Sam had experienced failed relationships in the past. Teresa had been married once, while Sam had been married twice. He saw his new relationship with Teresa as an opportunity to start over. The couple married on September 11, 1993. Teresa, 28, married Sam Parker, 37, who had just been promoted to city police sergeant. Although the early years of their marriage were happy, their relationship began to deteriorate over time. They argued frequently, and the conflicts were severe. There were concerns that Sam might have violent tendencies. They later filed for divorce in August 2006, after nearly 13 years together. However, by the winter of 2006, they had reconciled and decided to continue their relationship. In March 2007, Teresa decided to end their relationship and went on vacation to Mexico without her husband. After returning from vacation, Teresa started looking for a new place to live in another city, while Sam would stay in their old house. She took a few days off to move and settle into her new home. The next day she moved her belongings to a new apartment. Then she visited her sister, Christina, who now lived near her. In the evening, Teresa left Christina's house. She drove her SUV back home. At around 10:30 a.m., she visited her good friend Rhonda's house. Although she had planned to go to her old house to move her belongings, she decided to stay longer to make sure that Sam had gone out and did not see her. She wanted to avoid any arguments. Rhonda was surprised that the once loving couple were now avoiding each other. Teresa revealed that Sam had always been short-tempered and aggressive, especially when he was drinking. They then ended their conversation. Rhonda went to bed while Teresa went to her ex-husband's house. The next morning at 6 a.m., Rhonda called her. Someone answered the phone, but there was silence on the other end. After a moment of silence, the call was disconnected. Rhonda tried to contact Teresa several more times but only got her voicemail. Rhonda called all the numbers Teresa had used, including her work number, but none of them worked. Concerned, Rhonda then contacted the police station to request a welfare check on Teresa, who did not return her calls. In the workplace, everyone was worried about Teresa's absence because she had never missed a shift before. A police team was sent to check on her at her ex-husband Sam's house. About half an hour after the call, around 6:30 a.m., the police arrived at Sam's house but got no response when they knocked on the door. They then searched the area, looking through the windows. They hoped to find Teresa's car to make sure she was okay, but only Sam's pickup truck was in the garage. The police then went to Teresa's new apartment, but no one answered the door there either, so they left without any information. The police later found Teresa's SUV near her ex-husband's house. No one saw her, even Sam tried calling her many times to ask about her. Initially, her relatives weren't too worried, thinking that Teresa was busy arranging her new apartment and might not have heard her phone while cleaning. However, it was unusual for her not to answer any calls, as that was not her typical behavior. The day passed without any updates on Teresa. Christina had a hunch that Teresa was in danger. Teresa's family then officially reported her missing to the sheriff. From the beginning, the police treated the case as a top priority. They sent several officers to talk to Teresa's ex-husband, Sam, to gather information about the events leading up to her disappearance. The Georgia Federal Bureau of Investigation became involved in the case. They had known about Teresa's family's domestic violence for years. On May 4, 2002, police were called by Teresa's neighbors to report that Sam was drunk and extremely aggressive. He had been drinking all day and was violent toward Teresa. The patrol officer observed a bruise on Teresa's face, indicating that she had recently been beaten. Despite this, she chose not to file charges against her husband. The next incident occurred on April 27, 2003, while they were on vacation in Florida. They were dining at a restaurant when her husband became intoxicated and began threatening to kill Teresa in front of others. She then attempted to leave the parking lot in her car. At that point, Sam pulled out his service weapon and fired several shots into the car. Even after the police arrived, he continued to verbally abuse her and denied firing his weapon. When Teresa accused him of something, Sam threatened to commit and end his own life. As a result, Sam was taken to a mental health facility in Florida, where he was held for 72 hours for evaluation. Doctors were particularly concerned about his disturbing statements, such as his claim that he knew how to dispose of a body without leaving a trace. Additionally, Sam had extensive experience concealing evidence. He is very familiar with the local area, including the least frequented locations. Kayla, Sam's ex-wife, described him as an alcoholic. When he drank, he became aggressive and violent. She recounted an incident where he smashed a glass on the floor in a fit of rage, then grabbed her by the hair and dragged her through the broken pieces. He then chained her to the bed and only released her in the morning when he left for work. He also strangled Kayla and threatened her with a gun. She eventually escaped the abusive relationship by moving to another city to get away from him. The police were eager to solve Teresa's case quickly, especially since it involved 2 police officers, which would affect the reputation of the police department. They began by investigating Teresa's new apartment and Sam's house. When police arrived at Teresa's apartment, they found a note on the door from the courier saying that Teresa's order could not be delivered. Inside the house, everything appeared normal, with several cardboard boxes filled with Teresa's belongings. The police then searched Sam's home 5 times, which frustrated him, especially when they confiscated his hunting weapons for examination. Ultimately, the searches yielded no clues to Teresa's disappearance. All of her belongings, including her money and phone, were left behind. There was no activity on her bank accounts, so the possibility of her running away was rejected. At the end of March 2007, the entire Lafayette community was in confusion. Teresa had disappeared and no one knew where she was. This left everyone worried and many avoiding going out after dark. Those close to her suspected that Sam had something to do with it. However, Sam also expressed concern about Teresa's disappearance. He explained that she wanted to avoid divorce proceedings, so she ran away. However, this explanation did not seem reasonable. Hundreds of residents volunteered to assist police in searching for Teresa. Police made numerous attempts to locate her. Divers searched all local waters, and areas such as underwater caves were explored with robotic cameras. Posters with Teresa's image were placed on billboards and flyers were distributed throughout the community. During the search, police found no sign of her. The situation was further complicated by the rugged terrain, which included dense forests, numerous small lakes, and mountains. The police questioned everyone who knew Teresa. Within a week, the police had interviewed over 100 people. During these interviews, it became clear that Sam had a volatile personality, was extremely jealous, and lost control when he drank. Meanwhile, Teresa was determined to save their marriage. She kept her husband's abuse a secret and did not share it with anyone, although her relatives suspected that there were serious problems in their family. In March 2007, everyone was relieved when Teresa decided to divorce her husband, and they supported her decision. However, Sam's family had a different view of him. They described him as cheerful and kind, and although he struggled with alcoholism. Sam's brother claimed that most of their conflicts were actually caused by Teresa's actions, rather than by Sam. Only Sam's younger sister spoke up, saying that he did have a quick temper and, unlike Teresa, he often escalated conflicts instead of stopping them. On March 25, police interviewed Sam. At the time, he was not considered a suspect. However, during the interview, he provided information that contradicted what police knew. Sam claimed that he saw Teresa's car in the parking lot when he went fishing that morning. This claim was dismissed by police, as they did not find her car at the house at the time. The car later appeared near the house, but no one witnessed how it got there. He also falsely claimed that he had not contacted Teresa, but police discovered several calls he had made to her that morning. While this may seem like a small lie, it aroused suspicion, leading the investigation to take a closer look at Sam. Sam presented a different version of events. He suggested that Teresa may have run off with her boyfriend, Elvis, whom she had allegedly met on a recent trip to Cancun, Mexico. To investigate this claim, police traveled to Mexico. They interviewed hundreds of people, including tour guides, hotel staff, and local residents. However, they found no clues or evidence to support the story, nor could they identify her boyfriend, Elvis, which led them to doubt his story. Despite growing concerns about the case, Sam continued to deny any involvement in the crime. On April 3rd, police arrested a man in connection with Teresa's disappearance. To the shock of many, it was not Sam who was arrested, but his colleague, Ben Chapin. Police kept the details of the arrest secret. Ben was eventually released and cleared of any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, Sam was fired from the police department after 25 years of service due to his abusive behavior toward his ex-wives. He was permanently banned from returning to the force after his suspension. An internal investigation into Sam discovered explosives in his personal locker. The investigation into Teresa's case took months. Police were initially puzzled when Teresa's car returned to a parking lot near Sam's home. They discovered blood stains and signs of thorough cleaning in the car. Additionally, the trunk mat was missing. DNA analysis showed a sample belonged to Teresa, while they also found Sam's DNA in the same location. The police decided to arrest Sam. On February 4, 2008, nearly a year after Teresa's disappearance, police arrived at Sam's home, opened the door, and were arrested without resistance. The next day, he faced multiple charges, including murdering Teresa, invasion of privacy via computer, violation of public servant's oath, and invasion of citizen privacy. He was held without bail. Despite these charges, Sam maintained his innocence. Teresa's family, meanwhile, continued to insist that Sam was responsible for her disappearance, insisting that she feared him and did not want to return home. Despite the murder charges against Teresa, police have yet to find her body. Under state judicial practice, the chances of the prosecution winning the case are slim. Traditionally, few murderers have been convicted in cases where the victim's body is missing. As a result, the prosecution relied heavily on witness testimony, including Sam's ex-wives and Teresa's relatives. On August 17, 2009, in Walker County Superior Court, the prosecution alleged that Sam Parker had a history of violence against all of his ex-wives and was involved in an attempted murder. Sam had once confessed to his doctor that, as a police officer, he knew how to effectively hide a body. The prosecution detailed an incident that occurred when Teresa came to Sam's house to collect some of her belongings. They then got into an argument. During the argument, he killed Teresa, put her body in the trunk of her car. He then disposed of her body and carefully washed the car to remove any evidence. He then called his friend Ben and confessed that he had shot Teresa and planned to hide her body somewhere where it would never be discovered. He asked Ben to keep this conversation a secret. Ben shared his story just before the trial after reaching a deal with the prosecutor to drop all charges against him. Ben was supposed to testify against Sam. The prosecution said that during the time Teresa was missing, Sam suffered scratches on his hands and face. The prosecutor's office believes that these scratches were caused by Teresa in self-defense. Sam's attorney argued that he did not touch Teresa or her car. Teresa may have injured herself and then cleaned up the evidence and threw away an old rug before disappearing. The defense argued that all of the prosecution's evidence was circumstantial. Sam accused Teresa of having an affair. He even investigated her while she was on vacation and discovered that she had booked a double room, even though she was traveling alone. She also used a false name when booking the room. Sam suspected that Teresa had secretly met with his colleague, a police officer who had searched their home 5 times, but his colleague denied the allegations. Ultimately, the choice of the double room could simply have been because it had a large bed for comfort, or perhaps there were no single rooms available at the hotel. Sam still denies any involvement in the crime, arguing that there is no strong evidence to prove his involvement in the case or confirm Teresa's death. The jury was deadlocked and unable to reach a verdict, leading to the decision to retry. On December 3, 2009, 2.5 years after Teresa's disappearance, Sam Parker was convicted of murder, and he was also charged with obstructing and violating the oath of office of a civil servant. Sam was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus 5 years. Sam continued to maintain that he had nothing to do with Teresa's disappearance. After the trial, he requested a new trial, but his appeal was denied. 3.5 years after Teresa's mysterious disappearance, on September 20, 2010, 2 farmers found a human jawbone in a cornfield near the Chattooga River in Georgia after a flood. A search party later discovered a nearly complete skeleton, and dental records confirmed that it belonged to Teresa. Her death was finally officially recognized. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head from a hole in the skull, not a gunshot wound. The discovery site was 100 kilometers from her home and on the route that Sam had taken to fish. Was confirmed by geolocation data. This led the police to conclude that Sam was responsible for Teresa's murder. Despite this evidence, Sam Parker maintained his innocence. He is currently serving a life sentence in prison.